generous support of the Service Oil Company, 345R Lancaster Street, Leominster, 978-466-1922.
The Leominster City Council, petition 3418, Middlesex Integrative Medicine, Inc. Grant a special permit for a registered marijuana cultivation site located at 25 Mohawk Drive. I see Attorney Campobasso is here. You want to come on in with your clients and representatives?
Good evening.
Yeah,
Good evening.
We all know you, Attorney Campobasso, but if you want to just introduce yourself for the record and
Sure.
everybody you're with.
My name is Peter Campobasso, 3 Park Street, Leominster. With me tonight, Nancy Corey. She is the executive director, of Middlesex Integrative Medicine. Ed Bartlett, who is the chief financial officer. We have Peter Reynolds from McKenzie Engineering. We have Steve Bukowski from the security company, and Ryan Roy from Middlesex Integrative as well. I think we'd like to proceed by giving a brief presentation about 3 of the different aspects of the site. We can answer questions, obviously, but I think as we go through the presentation, you'll see that the site at 25 Mohawk Drive clearly is a good site, meets all the requirements for the special permit to issue. First, I'd like to have Peter Reynolds from McKenzie Engineering sort of show you the site, the plans, and that the proposed location will be completely contained in the building that's at 25 Mohawk Drive.
I don't know if you're all familiar with this building at 25. It was Jerry Crowley's old C&T warehouse. Jerry Crowley built it with his father, Frank, years ago, back in the late 60s and 70s. And the proposed facility is basically in the middle of that building. If you're on Mohawk Drive and you look, that building's very long, 500 feet long or so, and this is going in the middle of it. It takes up about 13,000 square feet total from what's outlined in green here. And it's everything is within the building. There's nothing going on outside the building as far as any security issues, deliveries, anything like that. Everything is in the building. It's got, this area is growing facilities, and this is processing in this area. Should I also talk about the lot one here?
Yeah, the distances, yeah.
I'll pass this out to everybody. This is a site plan that shows the red circle on this plan is a 500-foot distance from any point within the facility. And the green is 1,000 feet. There is another facility right now. As you look at this, you can see there's another facility, that small red rectangle there is on Lot 2, on Lock Drive, and the green circle is 1,000 feet. So basically, this is showing that it meets the city's requirement of being more than 1,000 feet from another similar type of facility.
So if I may, just to point out, under the city's ordinance, one of the conditions for the site to be a site, one of the requirements is that it be, no RMD is located within 500 feet of a residential zone church or other religious use. So the reason that plan has the red line is to show that nothing within 500 feet is one of those uses, so it meets that requirement. And the second one would be 1,000 feet from a school, a child care facility, a family child care home, a park, a playground, or other registered marijuana dispensary. So the green line shows the 1,000 foot, and there was a possible question about whether or not it was within that 1,000 feet, so clearly the map shows that it's outside that 1,000 foot, so it would meet that requirement, would meet both those requirements.
The main office area is being upgraded. This is a rough sketch of what the office area is going to look like. But basically, it's nothing that's open to the public. It's only for employee access.
No, that's good, unless any council has any questions.
Anybody? Council Zephyr, go ahead.
I have a question. Peter, you just referenced RMD, which is marijuana dispensary, right? But in looking at the application for the special permit, in a couple of different places, it references cultivation.
Correct.
So is this for a dispensary?
No, this is for a cultivation use only.
It is for cultivation use only, okay.
One of the things that is probably confusing that may need to be clarified
Okay.
is, I think in the city's bylaw, or the city's ordinance, it states that a registered marijuana dispensary shall be limited to one or more of the following uses, and it lists 3 uses. Cultivation is 1, processing, packaging is 2, and retail is 3. So I think there's kind of been some confusion about how you identify this. If you identify it as a registered marijuana dispensary,
Right.
cultivation, I don't think the state has made a clarification on that either. But for this particular site and project, it is strictly going to be cultivation. There won't be any retail sales or any type of that.
Council Bertanza, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe suggest that the petitioner might want to address the required findings in the criteria that we need to determine to issue the special permit. I'm speaking specifically to 105.6.3 of our ordinance, as well as 105.6.4. maybe just briefly go through those.
Okay. I believe in the special permit application that we filed, the names and the addresses of the owner of the facility is listed. The owner of the facility is Kevin Crowley, Mohawk Drive. I think it's Trust or Realty Trust, I'm not sure. The required license by the Commonwealth was submitted. It's a part of the special permit application filing. It's one of the tabs in your binder that I submitted. Obviously, the lease is also a part of the submittal. That's evidence that they have control of the site, the ability to use the site. There is a statement in there by Nancy Corey, who identifies the owners of the corporation and who the individuals are that will be responsible. The abutters list that we received from the assessor's office was also attached to the special permit filing. And the proposed security measures, there are security measures. The person who has prepared the security plans is here. He's going to be the last person giving the presentation, but this is the summary, if you will, of the security measures that I was going to submit to the council once the presentation was provided. We didn't want to file, obviously, for security reasons, the actual plans to make anything a public record. But the summary of the security measures can easily be described and are described in the manual that we'll hand out.
Any other counselors have any questions at this point?
I have an additional question.
You have an additional, go ahead, follow-up.
Peter, as far as the host agreement that's required as part of this process.
Yep.
I understand there's been a proposal, at least on the part of the petitioner.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Their community host agreement was submitted way back when they were going through the non-opposition letter process.
Right.
There have been some preliminary discussions with the mayor. We understand that the mayor will have the final say on whether the host agreement is signed or agreed to and what terms he wants to put in there, but for the
105.6.7 provides that the permit holder shall enter into a host community agreement with the city of Leominster. So would it be objectionable if, in fact, the council saw fit to issue this special permit, to issue it conditionally upon that event occurring?
No, and what I was going to suggest, that obviously we're not adverse to a condition being put in the permit, that the community host agreement needs to be resolved before the building permit
Okay,
issues.
great.
I
Thank you
think
very
that
much.
was what the council did in the past, so we're not disagreeable to that at all.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other follow-up? Counselor Bedanza?
No, I'm good.
Counselor Frida?
Can you just give us an idea how you're gonna handle the cash-only transactions?
Well, in this facility, there won't be any cash, it'll all be in Norwood. And we have a relationship with Century Bank, which is really the only bank in the state that is doing banking for medical marijuana. So they have their own security and their own armored cars, and they do all the handling of cash transactions through that bank.
So all the financial piece will be in Norwood, not here?
Right, there'll be no cash here.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, you want to continue?
That's fine, if you have any other questions. If not, we'll just have Ryan give a brief presentation on the cultivation process that's going to be taking place inside the facility.
Hi, council members.
Excuse me for a minute. Peter, could you take that easel down? Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
That's all right. Please sit up.
Council members, thank you for having us. My name is Ryan Roy. I'm from Raymond, Maine, and I'm the co-director of cultivation for Middlesex Integrative Medicine. It'll be my job, along with my partner Joel Pepin, to make sure MIM is producing clean, safe, effective, and consistent medicine for our retail RMD in Norwood. The facility will grow, process, and package medical marijuana. Inside the building, we will create 15 different rooms to do so. Plants are grown in 3 different types of grow rooms during their life. They'll start in a propagation room, which is a clone room where we'll take cuttings from stock plants or mother plants, and we'll put them in a medium and root them. This takes about 2 weeks before the plant has a good root mass. Once they have a root mass, they'll be transplanted and they'll be placed into one of 2 veg rooms. And in the veg rooms, the plants will start, gaining size, developing more root mass. That process will take between 21 and 31 days, depending on the strain in the plant. After that 21 or 31 days, they'll be placed in one of 6 flower rooms. And at that point, the plants will start to flower. It'll be about 63 days before the flowers are ready for harvest. Once we harvest them, they'll be de-leafed, and they'll be hung in one of 2 drying rooms. And they'll be hung for about, again, 2 weeks. And then at that point, there'll be all the flowers on that stick will be cut off, and they'll be placed in a curing room for another 2 weeks. Upon the completion of the curing cycle, the product is then ready to be packaged, and it'll be packaged in our packaging room, and then it'll be stored in our inventory storage room, which the inventory storage room won't border any of the exterior walls in the building for extra security, and there'll only be a few members or few employees that'll have access to that room. So all in all, it takes about 135 days from taking a cutting to actually having finished product. And we anticipate employing around 40 different people. These will be good paying jobs. These will be, jobs that are, people that get these jobs will be at the ground floor of an up and coming industry. We anticipate 30 full-time jobs and 10 part-time jobs. And the employees will be responsible to feed the plants, moving the plants, between grow rooms at the appropriate times, and to harvest the plants and then package the plant, or package the material when it's finished. I know that one concern is odor control, and I'm working with Rick Hillman from DE Corporation right now on a plan. In the past, we've used negative air pressure and carbon filtration, and we've been successful in our other cultivation facilities throughout Maine. So basically, that's a bird's eye view of what's going to happen in that facility. So any questions, feel free to ask.
Can I just ask, can you just describe, other than employees going back and forth, a rough idea of the daily traffic that you're going to generate from that facility as far as deliveries and whatnot?
So, I don't anticipate more than one delivery, or, excuse me, delivery with the product exiting the building. I would say, one a day, no
Okay.
more than one a day. When it comes to growing mediums or material to actually grow the plant, I would say, one a week,
Okay.
potentially. And then obviously cleaning supplies and stuff like that, I see once every couple weeks, once every month, potentially.
And the hours of operation?
Right now, it looks like we'll, open around 8. The employees will come in around 8 and potentially be open to 8.
Okay,
But that could change.
all right. And are there any plans, I didn't read the lease in detail, but are there any options to expand within that? I know you're only using a portion of the building, correct?
Yeah, we're only using a portion of that. That's probably out of my,
Yes, we do have an option to acquire additional space if it becomes available.
Okay. And my understanding is you can't have access from other tenants in the building. Is that more a question for the security guy, Pete?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, okay. Does anyone else have any questions at this point? Councilor Bedanza?
Yeah, there's a provision in our ordinance that requires a minimization of adverse visual or economic impacts on the butters. So in terms of those, I was wondering, what are we talking about for signage?
There were a couple of the requirements, signage and hours of operation were a couple that I wasn't really sure how the council wanted to deal with, because the way it reads, hours of operation would be imposed if it was a dispensary for retail, but if it's cultivation, it doesn't seem necessary. So I wasn't sure how you wanted to deal with that. And the second part of it is, the signage, I don't believe that they are planning on any type of signage. And the language that's typically required for the patients that need to come in and display their card in order to make entrance is what that signage is for. So other than maybe a sign that says Middlesex Integrative so that people coming to the facility can find how to get there, other than that,
Correct.
I don't think
Just for
there's-
identification, not for,
So to the outside world, assuming that this odor is controlled, no one in the world would necessarily know what was going on in this facility 400 feet away.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct,
Well, that's how you want it, right?
correct.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
how it needs to be, yes.
Yeah. Any other councilors have questions? Oh, Gail, Councilor Feckley?
Just wanted to know, when do you feel you're gonna be fully operational?
it's gonna take about 6 months from when we start building to be finished the build, and then, another 135 days after that till we have product ready to sell. Once we have product ready to sell, it'll be consistent, it won't be every 135 days, it will be consistently cutting down and turning over the plants. But, yeah, we're looking at quite a while before we have our first
So within the year?
sale. I don't believe our
Perhaps
first
beyond
sale will
that?
be in the year. I believe the building will be completed
Okay.
and there'll be plants and we'll have all the inspections from DPH at that point, yeah.
Okay, good, just wanted to get a rough idea.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Can you give us an idea of the total capital improvement cost that you're anticipating?
It's
Yeah.
a moving target.
Is it?
It is a moving
only one
target.
direction though.
I believe right now the projection is somewhere in the vicinity of $4.5 to $5 million for
Yeah.
site improvements in order to
Okay.
get the facility up to all the requirements.
Right. Counselor Ardinger?
Did I misunderstand you, Mr. Campobasso, but you said people would be coming in with their prescriptions?
No,
Okay, I thought I heard you say that, but I probably misunderstood.
no, one of the things that distinguishes the cultivation from the retail is in the ordinance and a lot of the state requirements, if someone wanted to go to the facility to make access, they need a special identification card, and it has, that signage and what needs to be on the card has to be displayed so that people know they can't make entrance unless they have a card
And this card is for what?
for patients.
Just for patients?
Correct.
So patients will be coming in to fill up?
No, not at this site.
Not at this site, okay.
No, this is strictly cultivation. The only people that will have entrance will be the workers, probably certain state officials upon proper notice.
So the sign that tells them they can gain access if they have this card, I'm maybe missing something, I'm sorry, but
So if you go to the ordinance, one of the requirements for the site, there's two different aspects that I think Attorney Bedanza was referring to earlier. There's the site requirements and then there's the application requirements in order for the council to take action on the special permit. Section 105.5.6, signage for a registered marijuana dispensary. And it needs to include language that a registration card, and this is a quote, registration card issued by Mass Department of Public Health is required. So in other words, there would need to be signage on the building where entrance is for prospective people going into the building, that there's only one way you can get in, and that's if you had the proper registration card. But the confusing part of it is because they make reference to registered marijuana dispensary, it gives the impression that everyone needs one. But that really pertains to retail, because patients would be going to the dispensary to obtain their prescription, and in order to gain access, they need the identification card.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
the purpose of the signage. The only signage we would be talking about here would basically be a typical business sign that says Middlesex Integrative Medicine with an arrow, you know, how to get to the place, or for deliveries, whatever. That's essentially it. I hope
Counselor
that
Zip?
answers your question.
Go ahead.
I have a quick question. So the product that you cultivate in Leominster, is that solely for your dispensary in Norwood?
Yes, correct.
And is the plan down the road to perhaps sell to other retail dispensaries as well?
Potentially down the road, if we got another license.
Okay.
In a different city.
Right, for a retail operation, another
Yes,
retail operation?
absolutely, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
But right now, this product that's coming out of the Leominster facility is really exclusively for your Norwood retail?
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other counselors? Counselor Marchand?
If I may, a few questions. Are there any other uses in the building, the facility that you're gonna be leasing?
And I don't
No, other
believe,
than cultivation and processing, no.
Okay, so there's no other tenants in that building?
Not in our section.
not,
Or in the physical building itself?
Um,
Are you occupying is 13,000 square feet the entire building, or is there more building that you're not using that's used by another tenant?
I think,
The entire building's about 110,000 square feet.
So what's in there?
I believe,
Want me to touch on that?
yeah, why don't
Yeah.
you?
My
Sure.
name's Kevin Crowley, I run the building down there, my family owns it, my father built it.
Kevin, can you use the mic, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
To repeat. Hello?
Thank you.
My name's Kevin Crowley, I'm the manager of the property, my family owns it, my father built it, et cetera. The building is approximately, as Peter just said, just about 100,000 square feet. It consists of what we call warehouse 1, 2, 3, and 4. That designation came about from the series of buildings that were added over time in 1968 and 72 approximately. Each separate numbered warehouse is a standalone concrete block with fire doors in between them. Excuse me. Middlesex is going to be renting the entirety of warehouse number 3, and they're going to be putting up a new demising wall and taking over a portion of warehouse number 2. There will be concrete block demising walls with no interior access between sections of the building. There is other uses in the building. Aaron Industries currently rents about 40,000 square feet, and they store some of their excess product. New England Cable and Wire, which is a neighbor of ours on Mohawk Drive, also rents. Currently, they're renting about 18,000 feet, and they're going to be downsizing when they put up the demising wall into the smaller half of that remaining piece in Warehouse 2. In Warehouse 1, which is adjacent to it, would be cutting-edge granite and stoneworks. And then up towards the front, which used to be my father's old repair shop, and main offices, we have a variety of tenants from a temp employment agency rents in the offices, a construction company that I work for that rents in the offices, A&G Towing, an Synergy Electric, and Blue Knife Computers. And also, way up in the corner is Psychiatry and Family Counseling, which is not part of the same building. It was determined during the letter of non-opposition.
Okay, thank you on that one, I appreciate that.
No problem.
Security, you mentioned security. What happens after hours around the perimeter of the neighborhood?
So this might be a good time for Steve
Okay, so
to
let's
give-
hold off on that for a couple others.
Oh, okay,
We'll get
sorry.
back to that if we can. No, that's all right. Safety plan for the fire department. There's a fire on the property. crematories are self-contained. Is this self-contained to that extent where we don't have to worry about literally the smoke? If there's a fire?
Is that a question?
I'm not sure we totally understand the question.
If there's a fire at the property,
Because
and it
obviously
begins
there's,
to burn,
yep, there's
what
sprinklers.
happens to the product that's inside the building, and how are the firefighters protected from the smoke inhalation?
Oh, okay.
So that's a good question.
I think the building is required to have the smoke, the sprinklers.
Well, the building has a sprinkler system. If anything caught fire, the sprinklers are going to go off
Well, I've seen
quickly.
fires in buildings with sprinklers, and you still have an incredible amount of smoke. So I'm just wondering, how, the smoke could be the building part of it, but at the same time, the product that's inside there, is it self-contained to the point where it will not poison the neighborhood?
Well, self-contained in each room, there's separate rooms, we 15 altogether. So it's not like one big room with just flour.
If there was smoke in one of these rooms, it cannot get out of the room, first of all. And if some product caught on fire, the only thing in this whole building that's flammable is the plant itself.
Right.
And when you think about the plant is continually being dripped, water's continually dripping on it, the raw plant itself, you'd have a hard time catching it on fire.
So you're saying there would never be a fire?
I'm saying it would be, somebody would have to arson, they'd have to bring
Yeah.
gasoline in or something to start a fire
Right.
in these plants, because water is continually dripping and feeding these plants.
Right.
They're not dry, it's not.
Well,
like
there's
a dry
drying rooms,
forest.
correct?
Not like a Christmas tree.
Are they drying rooms?
In the drying rooms, there's also sprinklers.
Okay.
I think it's a legitimate question, and
Yeah.
it's a good point. Obviously, there will be certain fire code requirements that must be implemented
Right.
when the building is built out. The building plan details have not been provided to the
Okay.
fire department yet. We could get this type of conversation or discourse and see what additional requirements they may want in the
Right.
building.
Okay, thank you.
But
That's
it's a good point.
answer.
It's a
Thank
ve-
you.
It's
I
a very
appreciate
good
that.
point, yep.
Okay, thank you. Counselor, do you have any recommendations you want to read in, or you can do that afterwards?
I would do that afterwards, yeah,
Okay,
after we
all right.
deliberate.
If you don't mind, if we get into that safety piece. One of the things is the concern about after hours. Is it electronic security, or is there actually a physical person there monitoring 24/7, that type of thing, so.
Well, they're
Thank
going
you.
to do a whole.
Yep, yep,
I can
when you're
talk-
ready.
Talk to that.
Yep.
So we've got 3 levels of security being put in place for the property. It's all electronic based, and it,
Steve, give your name and.
so I'm Steve Bukowski with Safer Places.
Thank you.
Security consultant. So we came on board here to design a security system for them, and really referring to the 105 CMR. We also met with the chief of police in Leominster to see what requirements he may have, and did some preliminary plans and submitted them. But really, the gist of it is there are 3 primary systems. You have a perimeter or intrusion alarm system, an access control system, which is really primarily key fobs, eliminating hard keys to be distributed so everyone has special access, and then video surveillance. The intrusion side is probably the biggest piece for after hours, because that's, no one's in the building, but the entire perimeter, any entrance, any door, any window, they're contacted. Every office, every space, every perimeter wall or building has got motion detectors. We even have roof motion detectors and things like that, so it's very difficult to get into the space. And if you do, there's corridor motion detectors, so if you get into one room, you're not gonna go very far. So with that intrusion system, we also have redundant digital communicators, so cellular communicators. So you have 2 communicators, which you also have to have 2 separate central station monitoring stations. So if one goes down, it's complete redundancy. So it's pretty secure from an electronic perspective and people getting into the building. With the cameras, we have the entire of their space of the building covered with exterior cameras, as well as cameras focused on any door on the outside. Cameras again on the inside. There isn't a space except for restrooms where there aren't cameras, basically. You cannot move around that building without being seen on a camera. And that server that hosts all that is in a secure space with special access to it as well. The key fob piece is very simple. They issue cards to employees, and we can restrict access to where they can go and can't go. So anywhere where product is being handled, pretty much all of those doors are controlled by a monitored key fob. So we can track, run audit trails, and restrict and shut down and everything. So those are the three key systems. Okay. And then we also have intercom systems. So if there is a visitor coming to the building, before they're actually allowed in, they have to buzz and be allowed into the front office where there's security. And then from there they can sign in and be walked around. That's the very brief summary of the whole property.
I appreciate that, thank you. And then the last piece would be the transport component. Will the vehicles be leaving during the regular working hours? Is anything coming in late or leaving late? And
I think
is
that'd
there
be
any
a
kind of
question.
security component leaving the city, leaving the neighborhood?
It will probably be between hours of 8 and 6 or during the day, not during the middle of the night. You know, have a secure area for the vehicle to be loaded and then transported from there.
Okay.
And the regulations in the DPH have put out about how many, we have to have 2 dispensary agents on the vehicle, and it's unmarked, and it takes different routes. We'll probably have a security person with a dispensary agent in that vehicle.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Part of the intrusion system too is it's also 24/7 monitored, like panic alarms. So the entire space, there's a system designed so wireless panics are around, so that if there's an issue, they can instantly hit it and it will dial right out.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, Council Frida?
In regard to the security,
Yes.
I know they're few and far between, but have you done any security on a facility yet?
Yes.
I've
I've worked with several of them. I've actually been brought on board to commission many of the systems for a couple of similar type places, including dispensaries, which this facility doesn't have.
Okay.
Council Bedanza?
You mentioned the word preliminary plan.
Well, it was initially we submitted, and now we have a final plan that's all been done and completed with, you know.
And has the chief of police, what communication have you had with him?
Just that initial meeting when I met with him, we sort of had this design in place roughly when we met with him, and he seemed very pleased with it. You know, I think we're in excess of really what the requirements are as far as, you know, technology and so forth.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Attorney Campobasso?
Just a couple of procedural points I'd like to point out, some of the questions that were asked. I believe if you go through the different requirements, obviously, one of them is that it needs to, the RMD or the cultivation needs to be in an eligible location, which primarily is the industrial zone. And obviously, I think the site meets that requirement. It has to be contained. All cultivation has to be contained within the building, which I think, based on the plans you can see, all the cultivation is going to be inside the warehouse. To Councilor Marchand's questions, it cannot be located in a building that has a doctor's office or medical provider that would have the ability to prescribe medical marijuana. And I think that issue was dealt with. There was some correspondence back and forth, and there was correspondence from Brian Riley, from Copeland and Page. I did bring copies if you need that for the record. But he did establish that that medical building was not a part of this building. It was a separate building in the rear of this facility. One of the things that I think was discussed earlier as well was the hours of operation. Obviously, cultivation will be taking place 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in the sense that the plants will be growing. But they typically will have typical traditional business hours where they'll operate primarily during the day and try to complete their business within a normal business cycle. Because this is a cultivation site, there will be no patients accessing the site, so there would be no potential for administering, smoking, or burning of the product in the facility. The other point would be, it cannot be located inside a building containing residential units. Obviously, this is a completely industrial building. There's no apartments or residential use whatsoever. Again, the signage, I don't believe that the signage is a requirement because this is not a dispensary in the sense that patients will be entering the facility, but if DPH, the city tells us the sign has to be there, it'll be there. Obviously, there have been discussions with the police department about the security. Once the names of the individuals that will actually be at the site, all of those names will be provided to the police department because that's one of the requirements. And again, with the distances, I think we've established that the facility is not, it's within the 500 feet and the 1,000-foot requirements because it's not in that residential 500-foot requirement or the other RMD 1,000-foot requirement. The only other thing I think Councilor Bedanza pointed on was the application. There are certain requirements that must be fulfilled when we submit the application. The only thing we were not able to include in our application was the summary of the security, so I'd like to put that in so that our application filing will be complete. And I think with that, the council, it's clear that the site meets all the requirements. If there's any other questions, we'll gladly answer them, but naturally, we would request that you grant the special permit. And if you want to include the condition about the community host agreement, we're very amenable to that.
Let me just go to the public.
John, I just have one question.
You have, okay, Councilor Cormier?
You know, I took the opportunity, Councilor Feckley, a couple of years back to go to a facility in Salem where they actually dispense marijuana. And, you know, when you first walk in, there's like a double door, so you have to be buzzed in twice. I think, you know, one of the security things that I'd worry about is the only way somebody could probably gain entrance that doesn't belong in there if they were piggybacking an employee. Is there two separate entrances where an employee would go in and then have to be buzzed in? How does that work?
Well, the main entrance, they would come in, there's actually an outer door, and then you're into like a lobby vestibule, and then there is a second door. In a dispensary scenario, typically you have to do almost a man trap scenario where one door will be locked until the other one's closed and so forth. Because it's not a dispensary, they don't have that same requirement.
Okay.
You could do it, but there's a lot of things to think about with it. But so there's two doors, and with security right there, it's sort of a spot where it'd be very difficult because you don't have visitors. It's really employees coming in.
Right.
I think the tailgating thing shouldn't be too much of an issue at all.
Right, and I'm assuming that the entryway is pretty open. There's not gonna be any shrubbery or anything like that where somebody would, if somebody was around there that kind of looked a little suspicious, somebody would notice it.
Right, their space, all their exterior space is all well covered.
Okay.
And again, the surveillance cameras are monitored, and that is a security office there too. So they'd be able to see any outside any doors before they're open and so forth.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else before I go to the public? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this petition? Second time, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this petition? Yep,
John, we'll break at 7:30. Just keep
okay.
going.
I know you spoke earlier, Mr. Crowley.
Yeah,
If you could just identify yourself again.
Yes, my
Thanks.
name is Kevin Crowley. I live at 204 Old Farm Road, and I'm speaking in favor of the application for the special permit. Basically, in a nutshell, what I'd like to express is that the last 15 or 20 years have not been particularly easy trying to manage a warehouse. A lot of industry has left, as we all know, a lot of manufacturing, and with the manufacturing, when that leaves, all the warehousing gets emptied out also. It's been a struggle to keep the building full. It's been even more of a struggle to keep it full of what I would call high-quality tenants. I've had problems down there with recyclers and fire department, and, you know, I do the best I can to keep the place as neat and clean as I can and to keep it running and pay the bills. My mother is the majority owner, and it's essentially her retirement. So these people have come in since day one. They've been very professional. They've been very knowledgeable. They've explained a lot of things to me that I didn't understand. We've put together what I feel is a very advantageous lease for the property, which is the benefit of the city also. They're going to be bringing jobs in there, and they are going to be spending a substantial amount of capital to improve this building. All that says that they're not going anywhere, and they're not small time. The process of medical marijuana, whether we all agree with it or not, is legal in the state of Massachusetts, and it's up to us to, you know, make sure it's done the right way. I think these people have done their best all the way along to keep everyone informed, and I think it's a good long-term use for the building without much of an impact, if any, on the surrounding. There's a lot of trail trucks that go up and down that road, Mohawk Drive. I'm there every day. There's no more trail trucks coming in. It's, like they said, minimal traffic. I just think I think it's a good thing, and it's good. It's tough to warehouse these days. So I would respectfully request that you approve their special permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crowley.
Thank you. We're going to pause for a moment, Mr. Chairman. Sure. The City Council meeting for March 12, 2018 is now in session. Please stand and join me in a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll begin with the roll call vote, beginning with Councilor David Cormier.
Present.
Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Present.
Councilor Attinger.
Present.
Councilor Bonanza.
Present.
Councilor Feckley.
Present.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Present.
Councilor Dobrowski.
Present.
Councilor Frida.
Present.
All 9 members are present, Madam Clerk. I'll yield the floor to the Chairwoman of Records for a report.
Yes, Mr. President, I have the minutes of the regular meeting of the City Council of February 26th, 2018. I find them to be in order and ask that they be placed on file.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Any questions on the minutes? So moved. We'll now entertain a motion for a recess.
Make a motion.
First and seconded, thank you. All those in favor? Those opposed? We're in recess. Councilor Dobrowski, it's yours.
Okay, thank you. Okay, third and final time, is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this petition? Is there any member of the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to this petition? Second time, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition? Third and final time, does any member of the audience wish to speak in opposition to this petition? Okay, before I go back to the council, I do have some recommendations from the various city departments. We have a letter dated March 9th, 2018, from Officer Richard Kinney. In reference to petition 3418, a request to grant a special permit for a marijuana cultivation site. The police department is not opposed to this petition. Mohawk Drive is a dead-end street that leads to a small business park. I do not see any traffic concerns with this proposal. We also have a letter dated February 23rd, 2018, from the Zoning Board of Appeals. Dear Ms. Bouchard, who is our city clerk, pursuant to the City Council's request for recommendation, the ZBA reviewed the above petition at their scheduled meeting on February 21st, 2018. During their discussion, the board stated the proposal appears to fit the necessary guidelines to utilize the location above as a registered marijuana cultivation site, and therefore made a favorable recommendation to the council on this petition. If you have any questions, please contact me at any time. Thank you. And it's signed by their chairman, Stephen DeCarolis. We also have a letter dated February 15th, 2018, from Peter Nile, the building commissioner for the city of Leominster. Members of the Legal Affairs Committee, I am in receipt of a communication dated February 13th, 2018, requesting my recommendation on petition 3418 to grant a special permit for a registered marijuana cultivation site located at 25 Mohawk Drive. It is my opinion that this is an ideal location for this type of use. I recommend that this special permit be granted. If you have any questions or need further information, please feel free to contact my office. Sincerely, Peter Nile, Building Commissioner. We also have a letter dated March 12th, 2018, from the Assessor's Office. Dear Legal Affairs Committee members, I have reviewed the Middlesex Integrative Medicine, Inc. request for a special permit for a registered marijuana cultivation site located at 25 Mohawk Drive. The Leominster Board of Assessors currently values that property as an industrial use. A marijuana cultivation facility would be classified as industrial use. It would not significantly impact the assessment of that property. Actually would, but if you have any questions or need additional information, please feel free to contact me directly. Sincerely, William Mitchell, and he's the head of our assessors.
Hey, gentlemen and
department.
ladies, that will be a condition.
I like what he said.
We also have a letter dated March 12, 2018, from the Planning Board. Dear Ms. Bouchard, at a regularly scheduled Planning Board meeting on March 5, 2018, the Planning Board voted unanimously to recommend granting a special permit for a registered marijuana cultivation site located at 25 Mohawk Drive. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact my office. Sincerely, Kristen Kelly, and she's the Director of Planning and Development. I believe the only recommendation we may be missing is from the Board of Health.
ZBA?
No, we got one from the ZBA, was read in the record.
All right. Treasurer.
From the treasurer? Oh, okay, I didn't see that one.
I think the recommendation from the treasurer was filed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't get that one. Okay, thank you. Oh, he did two recommendations in one. Dated February 23rd, 2018. This is addressed to myself, Legal Affairs Chair. Dear Councilor Dombrowski, in reference to 3418, I have checked the property at 25 Mohawk Drive owned by Mohawk Drive Corporation, and there are no outstanding taxes or water bills owed at this time. I have no objection for it to be used as a marijuana cultivation site. Please let me know if you have any other questions, and this is signed by David LaPlante, the city treasurer. At this point, do any members of Legal Affairs have any comments or questions? Councilor Frida?
No, I'm good.
Councilor Bedanza? Okay. Do any members of the council as a whole have any comments or questions? Mr. Campbell, we're awaiting a recommendation from the Health Department. I'm going to get into that with my subcommittee in a moment, but if your clients could ask us what relationship does a cultivation site have with the local health department? Are they reporting at all to the local health department, or are they really governed by the state? Or is it both?
I think it's both, because
Yeah.
if we process and if we make edibles at the site, health department we have to get a permit from them as well.
Okay,
So they'd be, I think, pretty closely involved.
like a common vitulers license type of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so they're gonna have some scrutiny in this,
Yes.
in this game, okay. All right, well, before we close, or what we do, Council Frida, you wanna leave the public hearing open to get the Board of Health recommendation?
I think we need to get that.
Okay,
Yeah, that, I would support that.
Council Bedanza?
I'm inclined to move forward, but
Yeah.
I'll leave it to the chair. How's that?
Well, let me,
I mean, this thing's so regulated on the state level that I don't see it as a real, I mean, the health director's been out. Otherwise, I think we would've had it.
yeah, no, I know that. I'm inclined
I
to,
hate to hold up progress.
If I may, Mr. President,
yes,
to the chair, there have been discussions between Nancy and other members of the company with Chris
Okay,
at different times. He's always expressed favorability. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he was in favor of the project, and he understands that there's going to be a working relationship between the two, but his comments and the meetings have been very positive, and he's been, sincere in the fact that he's he's looking forward to working with the company, so.
yeah, and I remember the first go-round, he was favorable
He
as
was
well.
very favorable
I
back
recall
then,
that.
so nothing's changed.
I mean, given the intense regulation, I'm inclined to go forward. I understand what you're saying.
I have no problem. If there's a majority wants to go forward, I'm good.
Yeah. All right, I think that what we'll do is we'll close the public hearing and.
Before we close, Mr. Pratt, I just want to put the security as part of our application, so our application's complete.
Okay, we'll note that for the record, that that's
Okay.
been done, and
Great.
you can just pass it around. Thank you. So we'll close the public hearing, and we'll make a decision
In session this
in
evening
this evening. Yep.
for the council. Thank
Yep.
you. Thank you very
We'll
much.
have a recommendation for the council.
Thank you very
folks.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John, you need a break? You want to get ready to the next hearing?
No, I'm good.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, next on the list here. Okay, this is a public hearing before the Leominster City Council. This is petition 1418, John P. Bulger and Dorothy Rulo, and 10 registered voters. Rezone the following parcels on Pleasant Street and Low Street from Residence B to Residence A. And this is a hearing that's been continued from February 12th, 2018. Pleasant Street West Side, map 481, lots 19 and 20. Map 521, lot 1 and 39. Map 488, lots 1, 5, 6, 7, 8. Map 494, lots 18, 3A, 31A, 32A, 32B, and 32C. Pleasant Street East Side, map 561, lots 35A, 36A, 37A. Map 340, lots 1 and 2. Map 410, lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 22, and 23. Map 496, lots 1, 2, 3, and 7. And also Low Street, map 488, lot 5. I'll invite the petitioners to come inside the council chambers if they like. Get my acts together.
I don't know whether you need the map again, or you've probably seen enough of it, right?
Well, it might be a good reference point.
Can you just keep it off to the side for now, John? We apologize. We should have an easel for you, but it's not here right now. Just so we can see you when you're talking.
Sure.
Um,
So we heard from you guys at the earlier meeting. I don't know if there's anything new or anything more you want to add, or if you feel a need to summarize again?
Okay, I missed that from the what meeting?
The earlier meeting when you spoke.
Oh, okay, yeah. We did go to the planning board hearing, March 5th. And they unanimously did not recommend it. It was kind of confusing. There was some concerns brought up from some of the folks that are opposing it, that if it got changed from a B to an A, that they'd have to get rid of an apartment, an existing apartment. There was some other questions about grandfathering in. If the properties were sold, it wouldn't be grandfathered in. And I believe you would be grandfathered in. It's the property that's grandfathered in, not the person that owns the property. And I can fully realize concerns about zoning changes. My fears are, this is where we live. This is where so many people drive through on their way to so many places. And the area's kind of getting chipped away at. So we'd like to keep it the same, not necessarily put more restrictions, but keep it as it is. And again, I can be corrected at any moment because I'm not an expert at this at all. I kind of went through the zoning ordinance, and I believe this is correct. The frontage for residential A is 80 feet, where B is 50. The width on an A is 100, B is 80. The side setback on an A is 15, a B is 10. Rear setback on an A is 30, a B is 20. And I believe the front setback on both is a 20. So overall, I think most of the properties that are now a B, which would be turned into an A, would still pretty much be able to do pretty much what they could do now, but we'd also be protecting that area and keeping it the same. And it's a big concern for us and many people that drive through there, especially in light, and I was very upset that the paper printed a picture of the houses that were originally involved because they had nothing to do with it, and I felt bad about that. But something huge could happen again, and every time that happens, it just encroaches on the lifestyle that people have there and enjoy. So I guess that's about all I have, I think.
Okay.
May I say something?
Sure.
We came before this council in 2004. We almost won, but for one vote, we lost, and that small portion of land remained a B. And consequently, now we have a construction that's inappropriate in a single-family neighborhood. And someone, I think she's here, someone said to me, well, when I drive by, all I do is turn my head. Well, there are some of us that are accosted every day. We can't turn our head. We have to look at that construction that just doesn't belong there. And we only lost by one vote. I was perplexed by that, but we did. Then, during the ordinance, we came forward and presented our chart and our request. And the planning board, in front of the planning board, and Mr. Cormier, you brought that up at one of the council meetings, had we done anything, and we did. And if you wanted to ask Mr. Ciccone, he verbally remembered our coming before him and requesting a change in the ordinance on this part of. But now, we're in a neighborhood with inappropriate construction, and it's only a small part that we're trying to ask a plead to you to grant our petition. It's a small part of Leominster that we would like to protect our neighborhood. It's an important part. You come up Pleasant Street, if you went up Chestnut, you'd come to Barrett Park. If you go further, you'd come to a very historical part of Leominster, and the beginning of the comb factory, and it's the trail to Showen Farm. And we know what happened at the planning board meeting, and we know that probably that there are other departments that disagree with us, but we live in that neighborhood and we ask for your help. And we also know that even though other departments feel a certain way, the buck stops here. And you can make our neighborhood what we would like to, because there are a majority of people that want to keep our neighborhood and protect our neighborhood.
Thank you, Ms. Rulo.
I just want to add, could I just add one more?
Sure.
You know, it's not just about us. You know, I mean, of course, it concerns us because that's where we live. But, you know, like Dorothy said, it also is the pathway to Shoal Farms. It's something that so many people enjoy, so many out-of-towners too. So, you know, I think it's kind of for the good of everybody, you know, not being selfish, although that is a portion of it, you know. So, now I'll shut up.
At this point, do any counselors have any questions for the petitioners directly? Okay, seeing none, I will go to the audience. Are there any members of the audience who wish to speak in favor of this petition? And if you could just identify yourself and name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Candace Fry. I own the property at 38 Low Street. So if you are coming up Low Street, there are 3 houses in a row that are colonials, and mine is the one in the middle that is set back, the gray house. I've owned the property since 2004. I put a lot of money into my property to upgrade it, and I did that after I moved out of a Residence B neighborhood. My first home was on Lincoln Terrace, where I fully expected to have very close neighbors and apartments and things like that. And that was because it was Residence B. And when I bought my house in 2004, I knew of the pending action at the bottom of Low Street, but I said to myself, I'm buying an acre of land, and on Lincoln Terrace, I can put my hand out the window and touch my neighbors. Here, I have an entire acre, my house is set back from the road, and I am going to have that neighborhood feel that I want and that I'm paying for. And if you do drive up the road, we specifically chose that house because it's set back from the road about 150 feet. So that was a big concern of mine. I did know about the pending project at the bottom of Low Street, and I do believe that Mr. Weyerbeck acted within his rights, and I don't want to infringe on anybody who has those rights. It's now 13 years later, and the project is complete, and I don't think anybody expected it to appear the way it does. Maybe it's because of the land topography, but those buildings are definitely inappropriate for the neighborhood. I did participate immediately after moving into the house in 2004 with Ms. Rulo and Mr. Bulger on making changes at that time. And I went around and I collected signatures from the neighborhood on Manchester Street, on Pleasant Street, and we were very close to having a change made at that time. I've also spoken before the council about the homes on Orchard Street, which are in a mixed type of development, and someone wanted to put a hair salon in one, and I know now that there's some type of home for mothers and children, and people have had concerns about those neighborhoods as well. What I speak about is the change in my neighborhood based on the fact that nothing was done. We were told the entire city needs a zoning overhaul. That was 13 and a half years ago, and it has not happened. If we take the Low Street situation and say it's an isolated case, we're putting our heads in the sand. It's not an isolated case. If you look around at most of my neighbors are older, and their children are the ones who will be inheriting these properties. And just as the case of the Weyerbeck property, he sold that property to outside people who have absolutely no regard for the city. They have no connection to the city. It's a management company. That is our worry for the future, and we have tried to make changes that were within our own capabilities. And we are always told that a citywide zoning rehab needs to happen. It's not happening. And as Mr. Bulger said, little by little, our pastoral neighborhood is being chipped away. Our values are going to be brought down. Instead of having the wooded area that I had for the past 13 and a half years, I look out to condos that are taller than my colonial house because of their placement on that property. Something needs to be done, and I do understand that people are concerned about spot zoning and making small changes. But I'm asking you to consider, when is something going to happen? This is a very, very small request that can keep the integrity of our neighborhood, and that's why I'm hoping that you vote for it.
Thank you, Ms. Fry.
Michael Antonucci, 41 Woodside Ave. It's a little disheartening to come here with our hats in our hands because the city's been very proactive in preserving space, looking at Shoreland Farms. We didn't want the mess of 350 condos up there. Look at the new bank that's built down across from the post office. It looks like it's been there 100 years. The company did a fantastic job. It fits right in the downtown plot. And then you go up Low Street, and you see these three hideous buildings. And anybody who drives up there who tells me it's not an eyesore hasn't looked at it. But better yet, drive from the bottom of Low Street, all the way up Low Street, all the way up Hill Street, and show me another set of condos. What's happening here now is, once it's been done, people look at a small footprint of land, and they say, well, maybe for single-family homes, we need more than an acre, or we need to have a big footprint. But now I can do 4 or 5 condos in a very small spot. And as the previous speaker said, we fought this almost 10 years ago. We were ensured that there would never be an exit on Low Street because it's so dangerous. And yet there it is. And sooner or later, there's going to be a major traffic accident there. As I've seen tenants pulling in, stopping at their mailboxes, people trying to come up the hill, somebody swings out around, and somebody's going to get forced off the road, or somebody's going to get hit. And that was our concern then, it's my concern now. I hadn't even thought about the legacy of leaving my property to my kids, because that's what it's going to be for. I would hope that because of this, this construction that went on, that not everybody's sitting there looking, saying, wow, with my footprint, I could just tear my house down, and I could throw up 3 or 4 or 5 condos. And again, what's disturbing is, even if it had been permitted, there was no sense of making it fit the style of the neighborhood. It dwarfs everything there. There's nothing but single-family houses going up Low Street and further. And yet you put these 3 monstrosities right on the end of the street. I feel bad for the 3 people abutting it, or even up to Dorothy's, where they built beautiful houses that were set back, they were looking for their privacy, they had nice land, and now they're dwarfed. You got people sitting on the 3rd floor of a condo looking down into people's yards, and all the privacy they expected by moving up there is gone. So it's not that we're trying to punish anyone, we're just saying that you kind of have to be fair with everybody. If we're going to protect Shoreland Farms, and if we're going to make sure that a building put in the center of town fits the historical footprint that we have down there, and we are in a historical neighborhood, as has been mentioned, if you look at all the dates on the houses going up Pleasant Street. If we're going to start allowing people to tear down single-family houses when they choose to leave, and I can tell you, condos never worked. My oldest son lived in one, and I will tell you, within 10 years, these will be leased out rental properties, they'll be falling apart. And again, all it's going to do is tear down the property value. I haven't seen any condos in Leominster or Fitchburg or anywhere that have held up and been a desirable piece of property. For a while, it was popular if somebody could get it fairly cheap, but everybody ends up leasing them or renting them and going out and getting their nice house in a nice neighborhood. So I appreciate your time, and I just hope that you would take this into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carolyn Sonia, 122 Low Street. I'm a 55-year resident at my address at Low Street, and I'm appalled at those buildings. I mean, we have visitors from out of town that cannot believe how horrible they are. My grandson said to me, Graham, how do you spell ugly? U-G-L-Y. All I can say is I'm in favor of the petition, and here's another word, G-R-E-E-D. because that's what it's all about.
Hi, I'm Nona Ojala. I live at 320 Pleasant Street, and I'd like to take a moment and pass these out. Gail, if you could help me. I beg your pardon?
Are they all the same?
You're all the same. What you see before you is a picture of the house that was built in 1759 by Elias Carter. And in 1774, Obadiah Hills started to make combs from animal horn in this house, which is now my house. He taught his brothers this trade, and they built homes further up Pleasant Street and continued this process, which eventually led to the huge comb and plastic industry that Leominster is famous for. Even though this area was considered manufacturing at the time, it was done from homes in which these people lived. They preserved the area and made sure that buildings fit into the neighborhood. That is not happening now. The condos that were allowed to be built on Pleasant and Low 2 years ago do not fit into the community that is there. Everyone involved with granting the permit for those to be built forgot the outcome of the challenge 14 years ago that resulted in not allowing those to be built. Then 2 years ago, neighbors and abutters were never informed by the city that condos were going up. They tower over all the other homes there. I feel people are looking down into my home, into my windows from those condos. As I said 8 years ago, when I appeared before you, and I still believe today, that there is a safety concern with the ability of the fire department to be able to go up Low Street and turn safely in there, especially in the wintertime. Let's try that tomorrow afternoon. There is a total disregard from this city as to maintaining the character of our neighborhoods. The thought process seems to be, let's put up as many units as can possibly fit. Checking with the building department, I found out that I have enough land that if I tore down my home, I could build several condos on that piece of property. And I believe that the homeowners around me have that amount of land also, that they could do that. This explains why I get several offers monthly from real estate agencies outside of our city wanting to buy my property. Just think, if I did this, the city would lose a piece of their history. It doesn't seem the city cares about that or the integrity of neighborhoods. I don't mind the ability of my neighbors to make apartments in their existing homes, as they have not altered the outside appearance of their home. I really don't want to see any future condos being built, as they do not add anything to the neighborhood, and I believe they lessen the value of our single-family homes. You have a tough decision before you, and I don't envy you. I wish you had the ability to say that no other housing can be built, but those existing homes can renovate to add an apartment within their home if needed. Please help us to maintain the character of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Marie Tremaine, 44 Sylvan Ave. As a homeowner in that area, I'm concerned not only about my own property, but also the entire neighborhood. After seeing those monstrous condos that were obviously too big for the size of the lot, yet they were still allowed to go in, I was shocked to see how close they were to the existing homes there. Talk about a bird's eye view. I looked online, and they're even advertising about the great view from 22 Low Street. The bird's eye view is actually that they can be looking right into the existing homes. If I was one of those neighbors, I'd be apprehensive to keep the curtains open. As spring will eventually come, in addition to that, we all like to open the windows to get the fresh air. Well, that's just going to invite them to listen to the conversations as well. Though that property was a mistake. Knowing that it was a huge mistake, for that reason, I support having this rezoned to A.
Good evening. I am Dana Ramos, 30 Low Street. I am one of the properties that is abutting what we have referred to for the last year or so as the monstrosities. I am the neighbor that sits in her home with the back patio door, constantly feeling like I'm being watched by the people who are now behind me, I don't know how many feet up into the air, staring down into my home. My son does not really want to be outside because every time he's outside, he feels that he's being watched. There's been a couple of times when he's been outside and it's kind of down the embankment, and he'll look around and there are neighbors literally 2 feet away from us, you know, being nice, but still uncomfortable. And when we initially bought our home in 2005, one of the things that made me decide to purchase that home with my husband and my family was the fact that it was wooded and it was beautiful and it was private. And that is what I purchased. And now, how many years later, that's no longer what I have. That's not what I purchased. And so I am in support of zoning the city appropriately so that future home buyers do not run into the same quandary that I am now in, where, you know, I want to live in Leominster. I want to be in a neighborhood. I did not buy in the downtown area in certain areas because, like a previous homeowner said, you don't want to stick your finger out the window and touch your neighbor. And I feel that exactly where we are right now. I'm sticking my hand out my window and touching the neighbors next door. So I am asking you to please consider the appropriate zoning for our neighborhood. Thank you.
Is there any other member of the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this petition?
Hi, I'm Helen Payson, and I live at 37 Woodside Avenue. I have 2 pieces of property. When I die and someone buys that piece of property, will they again put up a 3-story or whatever? And that's not fair to my neighbors at all. So, I don't know, you know. I'd like to have the board vote accordingly. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ron Dupuy. I'm at 20 Sylvan Avenue. I wasn't involved, I've been here 35 years. I wasn't involved in prior attempts to restrict the development that's been going on. It seems to me there's a couple of issues. The first is that there's no transparency in terms of what may be coming down the line based on how we're zoned today, so that developers could come in, seize an area, buy an area, and set up more condos. The reason I chose the neighborhood, relocated with work, came out of the south, nice neighborhoods. Came here because there were schools that were good for the kids. Lassie League was around the corner, and all kinds of community involvement that we could get into and enjoy that. you lose some of that when you take away the nature of the neighborhood, I think, from being more of a familial-oriented one to throwing up condos, some of which have families, but some of which don't. And it changes ever so slightly the nature of things. It's important. People have referred to Sholem Farms and the pathway through and our history in this area. I think it's really important. We don't have a lot of that elsewhere. Leominster really has a chance to take pride in what we have here, to keep it, and to further that. The second issue I see really is that I'm an old guy in a neighborhood now. On either side of me, no, within, across the street, I'd say 5 homes have sold. New families have come in. I now have neighbors with young children who came here because of the neighborhood. They don't know anything about this. They're new to the area probably, so they don't understand what may be coming down the road that they have no control over. I'm here to ask you to support the petition. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, third and final time, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this petition?
I'm down here for a zoning issue, but I would like to talk about this issue. It's amazing to me that these problems are cropping up in Leominster, and it's people trying to take over land and rechange the zoning. So I applaud Mr. Bulger, who I know for many years, and I see the concern on these people's faces. They have a right to be concerned because the whole structure of this Leominster is being changed by development, and they're going into different zoning and trying to change it. So, I mean, it's up to the council to see what type of Leominster you want to have. Do you want a congestion? Do you want to cause chaos? And it was interesting that woman mentioned she lost by 1 vote. And I was thinking, in my project, it involves Ward 2. And it was said to me a couple of times that it's all going to rest on a Ward 2 councilor. That is entirely wrong. Entirely wrong. Every councilor here is responsible for a zoning change and what the impact is on the people. So I hope you'll give this some thought and consider these people. Thank
Okay,
you.
Mr. Latches,
can you just give it, you got it, John?
Yeah, I get it. Mr. Latches, you could just, for the record, we know you, but for the record, if you could just identify yourself and your address.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Peter Latches, 22 Damaster Drive.
Thanks so much. Okay, final time, anyone else wish to speak in favor of this petition?
Joyce Gaza, 25 Low Street, and I have the, I support the change, the petition change for zoning. I have across the street the new condos that went in, and I know, I guess there were 3 that were sold and 3 that are still empty, and this has been almost a year. And I'm concerned with rentals coming in and upkeep of that property, if there's not a lot of structure within their guidelines. But I also, my back lot abuts one of the large pieces of land that goes up behind 2 other homes on Low Street. And I certainly wouldn't want to see condos going up in my backyard as well as my front yard. I mean, single-family homes would be fine, but that's just the way I'm looking at it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, anyone else wish to speak in favor?
If I could just speak on behalf, this is my neighbor Fran Chase, and she owns one of the houses halfway down the hill, and it's kind of intimidating, as I know, to get up, but she...
Sure, if you could just approach the microphone.
Oh. She was afraid of
Oh, no, yeah, no, John.
Oh, me. We'll get you next
John's a
time.
lawyer, he's in court all the time,
Oh,
so
yeah.
he's just, he's used to that.
Her name's Fran Chasen, and it's,
I own two properties, A and B.
yeah, so it's
On
the,
Pleasant Street.
she has a property, I forget what number, 270, which is like halfway in the middle on the west side, and so she's in favor of the petition.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak? One more, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Susan O'Donnell, and I live on 100 Eugene Street. But those monstrosities that are built on Pleasant Street, the house right next to it belonged to a cousin of mine when I was growing up, and the house right after that, 359 Pleasant, was my grandmother and grandfather's house, and the house after that belonged to Mr. Sutcliffe, who taught music in this Leominster school for years and years. So I spent a lot of time up in this neighborhood. My father was a carpenter, my brother is a carpenter. When those things they call condos were going up, my brother looked and said, those are the cheapest things I've ever seen being built. They use inferior woods and everything else on it. And you've got to look at these great big propane tanks sitting outside of them all. Apparently that's all they could get to use for heat or whatever. I mean, they're terrible looking. They sit out on their decks and they're going to be looking down at that poor house there. They're horrible looking. I can't imagine why any of you people would allow those to be built in such a great city as ours. I really do. And I don't blame all these poor people for being upset. And if my grandmother and grandfather were alive today, honest to God, I think that they'd be out there protesting with signs. You need to do something about it. We don't need any more things being built in this city like that. Let's get back to having quality built, not quantity.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the petition?
Get out.
If you could just identify yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Bob Bell. I own two properties in the area. One is a three-family that we bought in 2004, and I say we, my brother and I, own them. And the other one is the two-family that we bought from the Tata sisters. The family actually called us after both had passed away because we took good care of our property. So I understand many homes after us are single-family, but there are also a number of two and three families in my section. And I would immediately become non-conforming or whatever the term is because of the two properties. And we've had great tenants over the years. We've taken very good care of the property. My wife is from Leominster originally. And, you know, we grew up we owned property on Sylvan Ave for a number of years. So I don't like how the properties look, but I'd rather have you look at the general zoning than to change the small section of it. And I'd rather not have my properties be involved because I would immediately become non-conforming, having a two-family and a three-family. Thank you.
Mr. Bell, can you just give us your address, please?
The address is 74 Kendall Hill Road, and 290 and 296 Pleasant are the property addresses.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Did you have?
No, that's fine.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Joanne Petricka, 326 Pleasant Street, and my property will become non-compliant as well. I have a two-family home. It looks like a one-family, and I like it that way. I like that the neighborhood looks like that. I like my neighborhood. I am not opposed to being zoned A, except where does this leave me? Okay, what if my house burns down? Can I rebuild it as a two-family? You say yes, but do you know that for sure? No one has been able to tell me for sure. Yes, you can rebuild your house as a two-family because you are a two-family. Someone told me I'm grandfathered. okay? If I'm grandfathered, when I sell my house, is my house still grandfathered? Does the new owner, is that new owner able to keep it as a two-family? Or does it have to go back to a one-family because now it's Zone A? If I want to add a garage onto my house, am I in compliance? I don't know if I've got 30 feet away from my neighbor's yard. You know what I'm saying? I'm not sure how this leaves me. I don't like those monstrosities across the street as much as anyone else. But where does it leave me? And that's what I'm here for. I don't mind if I can put a garage on if I want a garage, if I can rebuild my house if it burns down and I can still have it as a two-family, then, you know, I don't mind if it gets rezoned. But I want to know this before it gets rezoned, not someone tell me afterwards, oh, you should have found that out ahead of time. I've asked at that meeting the other day, at the planning board meeting, I was one of the ones that asked a question about grandfathering my house. There was another man there who asked about whether his house burned down, would he be able to rebuild it as a three-family? No one knows. One person said yes, one person said no. You know, I don't know. Find that out for me, and then you can do whatever you want. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other member of the audience who wishes to speak against the petition? Third and final, okay.
Hi, my name's Dave Franciosi, and I live at 162 Low Street. I don't know, hopefully I can give you a little bit of insight, because I feel horrible for the people who live right next door to what they built. But I'm conflicting, because if anybody knows me, I'm a contractor, and I live in Leominster, and I live in that neighborhood. And what they built was wrong. It is ugly. And I feel horrible for you. You live the closest. And it's wrong. And there's provisions that can go into the zoning. Being a contractor, I know zoning and the requirements that are on me, and I have to follow them. Now, economics-wise, you have to look at that when you build. If there's something in zoning that's not covered, it needs to be added into the zoning. I feel terrible that, to me, B is too restrictive. By going from, I'm sorry, A is too restrictive. It's too dramatic of a change to go from B to A. It's too limiting. Excuse me, I don't public speak well. I build additions. I add on to houses. We talk about grandfathering to protect other people's rights. I'm across the board with this because I see everybody's point of view. But the restrictions are there when you make that change, and you will be limited to how you can modify your property, without a doubt. You can go in front of for a special permit, but the way I look at zoning, if you already know the answer, don't go in there and ask for something more unless it's for a handicap reason or something else. So I had a development that was built in my backyard at 162 Low Street. I had houses come in. I had to buy land and swap land in order to protect my privacy. That lot was sitting there for years. Nobody stepped up and bought it. Nobody understood how big that lot was and what you could actually build on it. And it's horrible. I still don't think those condos comply with the height limitations. That's my own personal view. The building department said that they did. So hopefully I can give you some insight, because I'm on the positive and the negative, because I feel for the people who have to live next to those. But I just think that changing from, changing B to A is just too limiting to what you can do with your property, and it's like making a wrong thing. Two wrongs don't make a right. That's probably the best way to describe it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Third and final time, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak against the petition?
You know I'm not against the petition. You know I'm for the petition. But Mr. Franciosi, we went with you, John, and we took his property that he owns on the corner of Chestnut and Pleasant, and we took it off of our petition in consideration to him. Now, I don't feel that this is a consideration to us by him coming forward in this manner and not understanding our situation. We don't have a big part that we are trying to change. It's a small part. And I think that if he's going to be a builder in the area, that he would be considerate of our petition and letting that, because we extracted him from our petition, I really think it's a double cross. Thank you.
Okay. Well, you know what, I think we get the gist. We understand where everyone's coming from. Let me just ask, is there anyone else who wishes to speak either for or against this petition? Okay. Are there any, I know we were asking for some amended referrals, and I don't know if we've gotten those. Amanda? We amended the petition and we resubmitted the referral list for amended referrals. I know we got the planning board decision, which I'll read into the record. I don't know if we got them from anyone else. While she's looking, I'll just explain. A lot of you are down here for the first time. When the petition originally came in, there were a significant number of lots that were included in the petition. What ended up happening is the petition was amended to exclude some of those lots. So when it first came down, we asked, as we always do, for recommendations from the different department heads so they could weigh in. The petition was amended enough that we felt we should get new recommendations because the area being asked to be rezoned was smaller. So that's what I'm inquiring about, is if we have those amended recommendations back yet. Councilor Frida.
Yeah, can we just, by a show of hands, how many people that spoke tonight are actually part of the zoning change?
Almost all of them. Just about all of them, with the exception of one negative.
Do you mean by the areas affected by the change?
Their lots
Counselor?
are identified, that's what you're asking?
Yeah.
That's a different number,
Yeah.
Mr. President.
Right.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I can address you for a second, please. So when we had 1418 before us for the first time, where regular course referrals went out.
Right.
And what happened at that point, the boards, is there a problem?
No, I thought you were asking about my property.
No.
No, okay, sorry.
No.
Okay.
So let me start over. When the original petition 1418 was submitted to the council, at that time referrals were made.
Correct.
And the respective boards and referrals were asked to make a recommendation based on that original petition.
Correct.
Since then, we've had at least 2 amendments.
Well, one
And another
major
one coming-
amendment and one minor amendment.
Yeah, there's another one coming tonight, correct?
Right.
Okay, so what's happened is, those are the kind of the standing ones. If we had to go back to them every time we amended it, we'd still be waiting for recommendations after tonight. So, if you want to, if you need that courtesy, that's not a problem, but if you want to move on it tonight, you can move on it as well. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, we've read
that
all
was
those
yeah,
into the record
right.
already, except the
So that's
planning
probably
board.
not gonna change.
Okay.
You agree to that?
I don't know, if you cut something in half, sometimes things change.
Yeah,
you
it's
know.
up to you, it's up to your committee.
So, well, I'll ask the committee. Councilor Frida, what's your feeling on that, on the amended recommendations? You feel comfortable with the initial ones, or do you want amended ones?
I could go with the amended ones if that's what you want to do,
Okay.
if that's the consensus of the committee. I still think there's a lot of questions, though.
Yeah, Councilor Bedanza, your feeling?
Well, I don't think any of the new recommendations that we would expect as a result of the amendments are going to inform me any more than I am currently. So,
Okay.
I mean, I've got a number of comments about this.
Sure. All right, we'll get to those. Let me
that's
read the
different.
planning board
Yeah.
recommendation, and we'll get to those. Okay, this is a letter dated March 6, 2018. It's addressed to the city clerk, and this concerns the petition that we are dealing with now. Dear Ms. Bouchard, at a regularly scheduled planning board meeting on March 5th, 2018, the planning board voted unanimously to recommend keeping the existing zoning of the above referenced parcels as Residence B and to not rezone them to Residence A. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact my office. Sincerely, Kristen Kelly, Director of Planning and Development. I mean, you know, this, like a lot of things that come before us, is a balancing of harms and risks. The fear is that there's going to be another development that's inconsistent with the harmony of the neighborhood. Also, when you do a rezoning like this, you create a lot of nonconformity. And I think that there's clearly not a full understanding of exactly what that nonconformity means. Do you have any comments at this point or questions?
No, I agree with you, but I do think that people need to realize that a zoning change is going to affect their property. I mean, it does go to the garage area, does go to an expansion of the property, and that has to be understood. I also don't like the fact that Ms. Patrica can't get an answer to her question about zoning. I mean, it's not a difficult question for the right people. So
I can answer it.
Yeah, I think we're fortunate Councilor Bedanza, former city solicitor, has dealt with this issue.
Yeah,
So if you want to weigh in.
I can take that. I have a lot to say about this, but I can take that issue straight on. So, a lot of the properties that are listed on the petition and are on the map that Mr. Bulger provided us are multifamily houses. So if you rezone those properties to Residence A, they become what is called a non-conforming use, colloquially referred to as grandfathered. So the use that's no longer permitted because of the more restrictive zoning, Residence A, is allowed to continue because it exists. It can continue through a sale or transfer. So if you convey your property to another party, that non-conforming status stays with the property. If the property burns to the ground, there's a loss, the property can be restored on the prior footprint, provided that the non-conforming use isn't abandoned. And by abandonment, you need to demonstrate that there's an intent for a period of 2 years not to use the property for the prior non-conforming use. More significantly, with respect to a non-conforming use, the properties affected by the more restrictive zoning that are now non-conforming, i.e. the apartment buildings, will not be able to change or alter their use without obtaining a special permit from the planning board. What that means is, for example, if a party who owns one of those now rezoned to Residence A wants to put on a new deck, wants to put a garage, wants to remodel more than remodel, but wants to do anything that's gonna change the building, they would have to go to the appropriate authority, which I actually misspoke, I believe it's the Zoning Board of Appeals. And they would have to convince the Zoning Board of Appeals by a majority vote that the proposed new use is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing use. So for example, if they were gonna put a deck on the back that's not there, now they can do it just with the pulling of a permit if it doesn't interfere with the dimensional requirements. But now they would have to go and they would have to come to City Hall, they'd have to file an application with the building inspector, he would reject it. They would have to fill out an application to the zoning board. They would have to notify all the abutters, they would have to appear at the hearing, they would have to convince the supermajority actually of the Zoning Board of Appeals. They would have to wait the appeal period, they would have to get the decision, they'd have to record it at the Registry of Deeds before they could get their building permit. Typically doable, depending on what's involved, but certainly adds another layer to the whole equation. So in a nutshell, that's basically what would happen to these properties.
So to summarize, if you're a prior non-conforming use, you're good if you keep it the way it is.
That's correct.
But if you want to increase the nonconformity or add to the nonconformity. Or change it, then you've got to get permission from the zoning board, whereas before, you may not have to get that permission at
Yeah,
all.
typically, depending on what it is, if you wanted to add a garage, for example, and there was no garage there, and the garage that you wanted to add didn't require a variance because it was too close to an abutting lot line, you could just add the garage with a building permit. After this is done, that property owner would have to go through that process that I described in order to be able to get a permit to build that garage.
Councilor Zephyr, you have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, through the chair to Councilor Bedanza. I don't understand why they would have to get, it's not a change in use.
It's any alteration of the use.
It's an alteration of the property.
Right.
But it's not, I mean, it isn't a change in use. It
No.
still is a two-family, and they're adding a
Correct,
garage.
but you can't, the idea is that the zoning board gets to pass judgment on whether the alteration is gonna require substantially more, is gonna be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing nonconformity.
Yeah, I was looking for that, and do you know where that is referenced in the, I'm looking in the zoning ordinance.
It's
I'm just trying to
actually,
find the
it's in the
language.
state law too. It's part of chapter 48.
I think it's
It's part of
48,
chapter
section
48.
6.
Yeah.
I think it's section 6, 48.
So that applies to every community. So that's what we're weighing. I have other comments that aren't related directly to that. I mean, I don't know when you want to address those or.
Well, I think if anyone else wants to, why don't we just stick with the nonconformity issue now? Does anyone else on the council have a comment or a question about that, Councilor Freedom?
Do we know if these have always been Residence B?
Well,
Have they been changed from Residence B from Resident A to Residence B at some point? They always been?
well, I think zoning has been in Leominster, so it's about 1960.
I'm talking about this area, though.
Oh, yeah, I know. I mean,
It hasn't changed?
I honestly don't have the answer to that question. That would take some research to find out. It's conceivable that at one point this was Residence A, but given the age of some of those apartment buildings, I would suggest that either they predated zoning,
Rezoning, yeah.
or that this has been Residence B for a long time. But to answer the question precisely, I don't know.
Anyone else have any questions, Councilor Feckley?
So through the chair to
Yep.
Council Bedanza, so somebody that owns a single-family home now in that area, if this
Right.
change is made,
Yeah.
and they decided that they wanted to turn it into a multifamily or a two-family home,
Yeah,
what process would they have to go through?
can't happen.
Okay.
With the,
Can't-
if I
can't
may,
allow.
with the exception of an in-law apartment, correct?
There are certain regulations regarding in-law apartments, that's correct, but you
Perhaps
can,
handicap use or,
years ago, you could go to the ZBA and get what's called a use variance. And those were permitted back in the day, those are no longer permitted. So if this is rezoned to Residence A, you would not be permitted, which of course is the intent of the petitioners, is to prevent that type of circumstance from occurring.
okay. So somebody that owned a single-family home could not change it to another
To a
area
multifamily
where somebody else
structure.
could live.
That's right.
Just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Any other questions on the nonconformity issue or comments? You want to go on to your other concerns at this time?
I guess I'll start. There was one comment about, a general rezoning for the city, and just by way of information, that occurred in 2012.
Right.
We spent a substantial amount of money and time, and I happened to be a member, not as a city councilor, but as a consultant to the city council on the zoning. Most of the time, quite honestly, was spent on the language or text of the zoning ordinance and not the map. There was, however, a considerable amount of time also spent on the map, and there were map changes. It is my understanding from my predecessor that there, in fairness to the petitioners, that there was an attempt through the planning board to bring to the attention of the city council this particular area with concern for the particular project which ultimately occurred. And that slipped through the cracks, and not entirely clear how. I can tell you that as a member, as a consultant to that committee, that map change was never brought before us. There were about, I'm trying to remember exactly, I'd be guessing there were about a dozen to 15 map changes that were recommended, and many of them were adopted, but that wasn't one of them. So there was a wholesale sort of look at the city, both in terms of the textual part of the zoning as well as the map. This one unfortunately fell through the cracks. No one would disagree. I think we could probably all form a very easy consensus that what was built there is abomination. As the ward councilor, I met with the planning director twice. I met with the building department. I spoke with the mayor multiple occasions. I spoke with the fire chief. I tried to get a fire truck test up there, only to find that the regulations didn't provide for that in a residential setting. I questioned the frontage with the building inspector. We ultimately, as a council, withdrew or repealed the common driveway ordinance, largely as a result of this particular project. I checked the height with the building inspector. Myself and others did just about everything humanly possible to find something to affect or leverage what was constructed there. And ultimately, it was determined that they were building every part of those structures by right. That's very unfortunate, and we hear the result of it today. I sort of see this as, I certainly understand the intent of the petitioners, but sometimes in life you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I've suggested to the petitioners the west side of Pleasant Street has some pretty good sized lots, and some of those are single-family homes, some of them are multifamily homes, and it's not too hard to imagine that what they experienced in that neighborhood with those properties on the corner of Low and Pleasant could occur there. On the east side of the street, there are a number of multifamilies, and to be perfectly candid, my appreciation of the risk of what happened on the corner of Low and Pleasant happening on the east side of the street is substantially less based on the value of those apartment buildings, based on the number of them it would take for a developer to raise. Today, with asbestos and the age of those buildings, raising structures is not a cheap thing to do. To assemble enough land to make it worth raising those structures and build condominiums, I think, is on the fanciful side. On the other hand, I heard, we've got a negative recommendation from the planning board, which we should at least take into account. We don't have to follow it, that's clear. We've heard down here this evening during this hearing from two of the people, which I believe are both on the east side of the street. Mrs. Petricka's concerns, I think I hopefully addressed to some degree at least. Mr. Bell's, I probably did not. But all in all, in a perfect world, I would prefer that the east side of the street not be included in this, but it's not my petition. So, if I'm forced to take a position on this, I guess my inclination would be to grant, based on all of that. I just might want to add one more thing. When you do these types of rezonings, you try to do them as circumspect as you can. And I think that's what the planning board was reacting to, that some of this is a little bit beyond what might be necessary. And I really firmly believe that's what they were getting at. I didn't attend the meeting, but I think that's where they were coming from.
Yeah. I was a little disappointed with Copeland and Page's response to this, because they sort of focused on spot zoning, which really wasn't an issue.
No.
I'm just concerned that there are, I'm just concerned that people truly don't understand the consequences of this. It's a concern I have. And I don't know if it's worthwhile to try to get a second letter from Copeland and Page that might better spell those concerns out, that people would be part of the public record and that people could read, and it might impact their decision or what they're doing. I'm just thinking out loud and throwing that out there. And I appreciate, your words, and I appreciate, your knowledge. But that puts you in a tough position.
Yeah.
To be,
Yeah,
and in
I
fact,
really-
you're probably doing more than you should be doing.
Yeah, I've got one
in that
hat to wear
regard.
here, really.
Right,
Yeah.
I know. So I don't know if it's worth, if it's worth getting a better letter from Copeland and Page that spells out some of these individual property rights and, gives people who are going to be affected by this a better idea of where they're gonna stand. And I'm throwing that out there. I don't know, Councilor Frida, what your feelings are on that.
I agree with both of you. I think it's a very difficult situation. And for the public, K&P, Copeland and Page is our city attorney.
That's right.
One of the biggest problems we have in the city, and it's not to pinpoint anything, is people don't understand the zoning that they live on. We see it all the time with people that are bought on unaccepted streets. These are things you're supposed to look at before you purchase. I mean, you two are attorneys, I'm an appraiser. I mean, these are things that you need to do due diligence when you're buying a property. I think to a point, Mr. Franciosi is right in looking at, the rights of the property and looking at, the rights aren't always what we might like sometime. But how do you look at the bigger picture? I think Copeland and Page getting a follow-up opinion, maybe with more of a discussion, would be the way to go at this point.
Yeah. Councilor Bedanza, your feelings on that?
I respect the position of both of you with respect to that, but we went out, we did something we haven't done in the past, thanks to Councilor Zephyr's committee, and we created a new ordinance, so people, in the past, this could have been done without anybody being notified, which is, if you think about it in the context of this particular case, is kind of scary. So I understand why that might be desirable, but I don't know that it's going to change anything for me, really. I mean, if I get it,
Yeah.
but, I think,
I don't know, I'm not offering that so much as to change anything for us. I mean, I think,
So we have explanation.
I just think that this is gonna affect a lot of households. And it might be just a good thing to have in the record that people can make a copy of, that sort of spells it out as to exactly what it is now, and if this change is made, what is gonna happen, what will happen to your property, what you can do, what you can't do, what you can do with permission, and who you get that permission from. So I offered it more as a primer, not so much to aid us in our decision, but we're here, and it is an opportunity. But again, you know, I'm just one, so, you know, that's the reason I offered it, really, is not offered it.
Yeah.
Threw it out there.
I think I get what,
Yeah.
basically what you're looking to say is that, without taking a position necessarily on the petition, that you'd be able to at least offer people affected a clear enunciation of what is gonna happen. And I respect the reasoning behind that, but I'm gonna have to probably respectfully decline, and if further time is the recommendation
Okay.
for that purpose.
So your recommendation would
To
be to
move forward.
grant?
Yeah, move forward,
Okay.
grant.
What's his recommendation?
To grant.
Grant,
To grant the change of zoning.
yep.
Councilor Frida, your feeling?
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yep.
I'd rather have this conversation in session and allow you the opportunity to go into subcommittee. Right now, the ultimate question is whether you're gonna keep this
Well, that's what I'm
open or
trying to-
closed, not whether you're gonna vote it up or down, but just to kind of get to
Well,
that
that's
point.
what I'm trying
I
to
know
get
you
at.
are, it's a
Yeah.
tough
I
process to
guess,
get
I guess
to.
I was just addressing what I
Yeah.
thought might be a further
Right.
time recommendation.
Right,
Right,
right.
we've had this, we're 1 day shy of 4 months,
Okay,
so whatever your committee decides to do is fine. It's just a
Okay.
question of getting into session so we can go into subcommittee from that point.
no, I understand that, I'm just, you know, what's your pleasure on getting a supplemental opinion from Copeland and Page?
I agree we should.
You think
I
we
mean,
should?
it's not gonna change anything, but I think by way of more definition to the public, I think it's important.
Okay. All right, so I think if our recommendation is gonna be to do that, then the question is, do we have to close it? Can we close the public hearing? What's your feeling on that?
I think if you're gonna recommend further time to do that,
Hmm.
I think you should keep the public hearing open.
Yeah, okay,
Well, you can't accept any more documentation after you close it.
yeah, no, I understand that. All right, I think our recommendation now would be to keep this public hearing open and get another hearing date. I don't know what's available. Okay, so April 9th, 6:15, and I just want to, you know, caution people that at least the legal affairs position is the only reason that we're doing this is to get a supplemental letter from Copeland and Page that may be of assistance to people.
So if I may go back to you, Mr. Chairman, if you can think of the specific questions you want to ask Copeland and Page that will help you to share with the public on that, that would be great.
I will do that.
And, you know, just get it into the office in a timely fashion. It doesn't have to be at this moment.
Yep.
And then the public hearing remains open.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay?
there you go.
And you're going to continue it to April 9th, 6:15 PM?
Well, we have to vote for further time, don't we? Yeah, once we're
Yeah,
in session.
Right,
Yeah, we
right,
just keep, right now, you just keep the hearing open.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Right, Counselor.
Okay.
There's a vote going down in a little while too, so. It's just- Mr. Bulger knows by now how.
I still haven't caught on.
Okay, we're gonna have a public forum right now. Thank you, folks, very much. Great job. You know, out of courtesy to that petition and the folks that are here, let's bring it right up front.
Okay.
Okay, so you guys can deal with it while they're still here, then get home and get the shovels and snow blowers all gassed up for tomorrow. Okay, I'm not gonna go by who has signed up because probably most of the people here have already spoken on this matter. So I'm just gonna do a general announcement and then we'll get right into it. If anyone else would like to speak again, that's fine. Or any other folks in the audience as well. The public forum is an opportunity for any member of the audience to speak on any matter specifically listed on the council agenda. Speakers will be asked to come to the microphone and state their formal name and address along with identifying the specific item or items they wish to address. Each speaker is respectfully asked to keep their comments within a 2-minute time frame. The council will not be responding or answering any questions. However, at the discretion of the council president, clarification may be given. So I'll open the public forum. Would anyone like to address the council? Please come to the microphone.
You're probably, go ahead. Sit down. My name is Peter Latches, 22 DeMassa Drive, and on the agenda is a petition 33-18. It states, Dean Mazzarella, change the zoning of 8 lots of land from residential B zoning district to commercial zoning district. This morning, at 10 o'clock, I went down to see the city clerk and gave her a written protest against this zoning, petition 3318. I'll read you what the protest was. We, the undersigned petitions, oppose the rezoning of property as specified in petition 3318 for the following reasons. 1, the proposed commercial development on Mechanic Street will exacerbate an already significant traffic problem at the intersection of Leominster Connector, Mechanic Street, and Commercial Road. 2, we believe the existing residential B zoning is the most appropriate use of this area with the least negative impact on the neighborhood. 3, we believe that the rezoning of this property to commercial business A or business B would have a negative impact on the character of the neighborhood and traffic flow. I have 109 signatures that are opposed to this zoning, and to be honest, I met probably 10 people that were for the zoning, so to be fair, that I don't have their names, but there was 10 people. These are all the signatures, and what I did, they all are Ward 2 residents. I try to get the closest to the area. Many people on Mechanic Street, 12th Street, 11th and 9th, up on 1st Ave, 2nd Ave, 3rd Ave, 9th Street, and Viscaloid, and that's about it. So I try to get as close to the area as possible. A lot of people were upset about the garage that went in lately, and they feel that that has started a traffic problem, and they feel strongly that this would create more of a problem because it's right after the intersection going towards town, and it would greatly affect the traffic in that area. I met with the city clerk and had conversations with the assessor's office and Kristen of the planning director. In the end, we had an agreement that I met the criteria for section 14-2 of the zoning ordinance. So I feel that, I understand the city clerk gave you the circumference of the area involved and that it met the criteria of 1412. So I appreciate the council. In the future, I'll be talking about this petition, and hopefully we can get it resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Latches. Would any other member of the audience like to address the council?
Just a quick question. I don't know whether this is a
Again,
help.
John, name and
John
address for the
Bolger.
record. For ladies and gentlemen, if I may, with all due respect, we have a decorum here in the city council chambers when it comes to listening to speakers. We want to hear them. They have the floor. If you like anything, if you have anything you'd like to say, please come up. But please keep whispering voices so you're not interrupting the speaker. Thank you.
John Bulger, 365 Pleasant Street. I don't know whether this would be of any help or not, but as Dorothy and I went around to all the houses, we gave them, it's a basic rundown from the city book on zoning of what the differences between A and B were, and tried to explain it to the best of our knowledge. So everybody, I don't know whether you guys want a copy, you probably got in your books or
Please,
whatever.
now if you can submit that to the chairman of legal
But
affairs.
everybody did get at least one copy of that, so, I don't know, it may save a little bit of time, I don't know.
Thank you.
That's it, thanks.
Thank you. Would any other member of the audience like to address the council? Second time? Third and final call? If not, the public forum is closed. We're gonna get right into session. And this is probably the first time we have deviated like this. We're gonna take matters before the city council right up front, and we're gonna deal with petition 14-18. I'll yield the floor to the chairman of legal affairs for action or disposition.
14-18, John P. Bulger and Dorothy Rulo and 10 registered voters. Rezone the following parcels on Pleasant Street and Low Street from Residence B to Residence A. Pleasant Street West Side, map 481, lots 19 and 20. Map 521, lots 1 and 39. Map 488, lots 1, 5, 6, 7, 8. Map 494, lots 18, 3A, 31A, 32A, 32B, and 32C. Pleasant Street East Side, map 561, lots 35A, 36A, 37A. Map 340, lots 1 and 2. Map 410, lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 22, and 23. Map 496, lot 1, 2, 3, and 7. And on Low Street, map 488, lot 5. I believe the recommendation from Legal Affairs is for further time, not unanimous. I believe it's a 2-to-1 vote for further time in order to request and obtain a opinion / explanation from Copeland and Page on non-conforming uses and increasing non-conforming uses.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Mr. Chairman, before I yield the floor to the council, on map 496, lot 7, is that to be included or excluded?
I believe the petitioners indicated to me that they wanted to exclude lot 7.
Okay.
But I mean, I can move to do that.
Let's take care of that this evening.
Okay, so why don't I move to delete lots on Pleasant Street East Side, map 496, lot number 7. We would move to delete that from the petition.
I'll second that.
It's seconded by Counselor Cormier.
Yep, thank you for
Coun-
bringing that up.
You're welcome. Council, sir, the recommendation read on 14-18 to delete map 496, lot 7. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0. 14-18 has been amended. Does the chairman have a report?
Yes, as indicated earlier, we would like to give 14-18 further time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, the recommendation read for further time on 14-18. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 8-1, further time has been awarded to 14-18 with a continuation of the hearing on April 9th at 6:15 p.m. in the council chambers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
We're now going to go back to the front of the calendar. And we're going to begin with communications from the mayor. We do have C-41, which is an emergency preamble. Is the chairman of finance ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. C-41 emergency preamble relative to the appropriation of $500,000 to the snow and ice expense account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund. Do you want anything on the
We're
preamble?
going to vote on
or-
the preamble, then bring it right back to you. Is that okay?
Yeah, the only thing I would say in that regard, obviously this involves the clearing of
Yeah.
snow and ice from the roads and
Right.
qualifies under the charter as an emergency preamble.
Okay. Council, sir, the recommendation read to accept C-41 as an emergency preamble. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? Councilor Shalfo Zephyr, sorry.
Yes, through the chair to the finance chair, for the next meeting, would you just get an accounting of that? I mean, after this big snowstorm?
Yeah, I'll get you an updated accounting. I have some information when we get, if
To the
if
vote.
the
Got
emergency
it.
preamble is
Yep.
accepted,
Thank you.
I can give you
Not
some more
this one.
additional
Yep,
information.
thank you.
Counselor, would you like this storm also? The one tomorrow?
Absolutely.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we'll see if they can push the pencil on that one and get a tight one on it. It's,
Yep.
there goes the tree fund, I think, honest to God. Okay, any other comments or questions on the preamble? If not, all those in favor of accepting it, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed by a vote of 9-0, C-41 has been accepted. Mr. Chairman, do you have a report?
Yes, Mr. President. The original appropriation for snow and ice was $675,000 for expenses and $150,000 for salary. At this point, based on the munis report through today, the accounts are, the expense account is overspent $139,000. There's been a 1,200-ton salt shipment that's been ordered, which is $92,000. As you know, the council accepted the provisions of the law which allow us to deficit spend to $250,000. These do not include costs associated with the last storm, which the DPW director told me would approximately be about $140,000 more dollars. So this is necessary to keep the department afloat and the roads plowed. I will get updated figures with respect to the past storm and hopefully for the storm, whatever occurs this evening, and update the council at our next meeting. But it would be my position that we should grant C-41, and I'd ask you to poll my committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield the floor to Councilor Pauline Cormier.
I'm in
Clerk.
agreement.
Third member, Councilor David Cormier.
I'm also in agreement.
Mr. Chairman, do you have a report?
Yes, the report would be a unanimous recommendation to grant C-41.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, the recommendation to grant Communication 41. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? Councilor Frida?
Just a comment. I think it's important to note that we have this money in stabilization, or we could be in serious trouble. There's a lot of communities who don't have that money backing up in a deficit spending. If anybody understands what that is, that's going into next year's budget and having to deal with this year's bill, next year's budget. So, you know, we're fortunate to have that amount of money to take care of our issue.
Great point, thank you. Any other comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of that recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0. Communication 41 has been granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, order that the sum of $500,000 be appropriated to the snow and ice expense account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, that recommendation read. Again, are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yea.
Yea.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the order's been adopted. I now yield the floor to Madam Clerk for C-42.
C-42, relative to the appropriation of $83,420 made to the Police Department expense account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund.
Communication 42, again, is referred to the Chairman of Finance.
Yes, Mr. President, first time on the agenda. Regular course, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regular course on Communication 42. We'll now move on to petitions. First time on the calendar, we have 39-18.
39-18, Prime Wellness Centers, grant a special permit to build a medical marijuana cultivation facility located at 1775 Lock Drive.
39-18 is again referred to the Chairman of Legal Affairs.
Mr. President, I'd ask you to refer this to the Clerk of Legal Affairs. My client owns that building, so I
Okay.
have a direct conflict with that.
So noted. I'll yield the floor to Councilor Frida.
Yes, regular course with referrals to planning, building, zoning.
ZBA? You said zoning, would that be
Zoning.
ZBA?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Police, fire, Board of Health.
Health Department?
Am I missing anyone? I think they should do it.
You have the Building Inspector, Planning Board, ZBA, Police, Fire, Health Department. Anyone else want to add in on that on the committee? Good?
No, that's good.
Okay. Any regular course?
Regular course.
Thank you. 39-18 has been given regular course with referrals to the planning board, building inspector, ZBA, police, fire, and the health department. Petition 40-18.
40-18, Kristen Kelly, Planning Director, amend Article 18, Section 22-105 of the Leominster zoning ordinance to include language regarding recreational marijuana facilities.
40-18 is referred to the Chairman of Legal Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. President. First time on the calendar, regular course, with referrals to the planning board, the building inspector, and the zoning board of appeals.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you like to set a hearing date on that?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. What's the hearing?
April 9th, 6:45?
April
That
9th,
works for you?
6:45. That
Does it
works for
work?
me.
Okay, good. 40-18 has been given regular course with referral to the planning board, the building inspector, the ZBA, with the hearing scheduled for April 9th, 6:45 PM. Are there any, we're gonna have to set the hearing date on that. All those in favor of the hearing date, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, thank you. Hearing date's been established. 41-18.
Thank you, Mr. President. 41-8.
1 second, please. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah.
41-18, Kristen Kelly, Planning Director, amend Article 11, Section 22-60 of the Leominster zoning ordinance to add language requiring deep observation hole testing for stormwater infiltration detention areas.
41-18, again, is referred to the Chairman of Legal Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. President. Regular course with a referral to the planning board, and the building inspector. And we need to set a hearing for April 23rd, 2018 at 7:00 PM.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council's heard the recommendation for regular course with referral to the planning board and building inspector. We'll vote as a council on the hearing date of April 23rd, 7 PM. All those in favor of establishing that hearing date and time, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed by a vote of 9-0, it's been established. 42-18.
42-18, Gail P. Feckley, install a stop sign at King Avenue against westbound drivers at Stewart Avenue.
42-18 is referred to the Chairman of Legal Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. President. First time on the calendar, regular course with a referral to the traffic department of the Leominster Police Department.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 42-18 has been given regular course with referral to the Traffic Department. 43-18.
43-18, Jim Repass, SVP, and Mike Stanley, CEO of Transit X, grant an easement to Transit X LLC for the construction of a podway along municipal rights-of-way.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Clerk, we'll refer this to the Legal Affairs Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Regular course with a referral to the DPW, the Mayor's Office, and Kopelman and Page, and I'll ask my committee members if there's anyone else they think should get a referral.
I think planning should be.
Planning?
Sir, we're in session. Can I help you?
Yes, my question is, on that matter, I'm here because of that matter.
Okay, we're in session.
Okay.
Thank you.
What?
You can talk afterwards.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. After the meeting, if you'd like any clarification, we'll be around. Thank you, sir. I'm sorry, John, if I can go back to you on that again?
We have regular course with referrals to Kopelman and Page, the Mayor's Office, the Department of Public Works. Council Berdanza added the Planning Board. I don't know if Council Frida has anybody she wants to add.
ZBA would be good too.
ZBA? Anyone else? Councilor Shalfo-Zephyr has a
about
recommendation?
The police department. It's across municipal rights of way.
That's fine, yeah, that's good.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Anything else? Good.
That should be
Okay,
it.
so 43-18 has been given regular course with referral to the DPW, the Mayor's Office, Kopelman and Page, the Planning Board, the ZBA, and the Police Department. Thank you. We're not-
Mr. President,
Sure.
before we go on, someone has closed the door. We need to have that door open.
Yeah, I don't know why,
Violation of the
yeah.
open meeting law. I'm sure
Thank
you
you. I
didn't
can't see
realize
from
that.
here. I
He's got
appreciate
it.
that.
Somebody's got it.
There we go. Thank you. They were talking out there. They probably
I know.
thought they were doing it as a courtesy.
I know you didn't
but-
realize that they couldn't close it.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up. We'll now move on to appointments. Madam Clerk?
Appointment, Emergency Management, Volunteer, Catherine Kuza.
The Emergency Management appointee is referred to the Chairwoman of Ways and Means.
Thank you, Mr. President. Regular course And this applicant has been interviewed by the director, but due to the important aspect of her volunteerism, EMS, I would like to have her down for an interview
Okay. When would you like to have her?
at the next meeting.
Okay. Probably like, I'm guessing 7:20-ish?
Sure.
Okay. How's that sound? Okay.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Before we move on, did we approve, do we have any records to approve this evening, or did I miss that?
We did that before we
Oh,
recessed
okay.
earlier. Thanks for bringing it up, though. So we have an appointee that's been given regular course with a interview that'll take place before the next meeting at 7:20 PM in the council chambers. Thank you. We now move on to matters before the city council on page 3. We've already dealt with 14-18. I'm now going to yield the floor to the chairman of legal affairs for 33-18. Are you ready to report?
I am. Thank you, Mr. President. Petition 3318, Dean J. Mazzarella. Change the zoning of 8 lots of land from the Residence B zoning district to the commercial zoning district located along the north side of Mechanic Street and the south side of the unimproved portion of Glendale Street, and also the unimproved Milton Street and adjacent portion of Glendale Street. All is shown on a plan entitled Plan to Accompany Petition for Zoning Change, Leominster, Mass., prepared for Dean J. Mazzarella, dated January 10, 2018, by Whitman and Bingham Associates, LLC. We have a public hearing scheduled for March 26, 2018, at 6:45 PM. So the recommendation is further time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council heard the recommendation read for further time on 33-18. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, further time has been awarded. Mr. Chairman, 34-18, are you ready to report?
I am. Petition 3418, Middlesex Integrative Medicine, Inc., grant a special permit for a registered marijuana cultivation site located at 25 Mohawk Drive. We had a public hearing earlier today, and that public hearing was closed. I'll give you my recommendation. Frankly, I don't see any downside to this. I see all upside. Significant capital improvements. I think the estimate given to us was close to $5 million. They're proposing at the outset 40 jobs, 30 full-time jobs. We know from prior discussions down here that because of the nature of the business, there's thorough background checks on these jobs. So you're not talking a lot of typical manufacturing jobs or typical labor. You're talking about long-term jobs that will benefit individuals and families. You know, I'm not crazy about the dispensary aspect of this business, but I think the cultivation sites, I don't think the city as a whole can lose. So I'm in favor of this. I ask you to pull my committee, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield the floor to the clerk and second member, Councilor Frida.
I support it. I think it follows everything that we supported for zoning of medical marijuana. And I also agree that cultivation is much more desirable than dispensary. So, yes, I support it.
Thank you, Councilor Frida. I yield the floor to the third member, Councilor Bonanza.
I support it, provided it's granted conditionally, and that condition be that the special permit is conditioned upon Chapter 22 of the revised ordinances of the City of Leominster, Article 18, Section 105.6.7, there being a host agreement in place before the special permit can be utilized.
Right, that's a good point. I neglected to bring that up.
Doesn't it have to be?
It says the ordinance says the permit holder shall enter into a host agreement, but I just think Attorney Campobasso suggested it wasn't objectionable, that the special permit be conditioned. It just gives us a greater assurance that we're gonna get that host agreement, and that there isn't gonna be any difficulty with getting it.
Yeah, I think it's good to eliminate any confusion, so
Okay.
I
If
agree
that's a
with that.
motion, I'll second it, that we make that a
Well-
condition.
Let's hold off one, oh, you can second it in 1 second, all right? I just want to make sure I have this right. Okay, so it's unanimous on the committee that the recommendation is to grant petition 34-18 with a condition as stated,
By Counselor Bedanza.
quoted by Councilor Bonanza. So we're going to use that language. It was chapter 22, 18,
Article 18,
105.6.7.
correct.
Okay, so that will be into the record, and that motion is seconded by Councilor David Cormier.
Well, it's not a motion.
It's
That's
not
our
a
rec-
motion.
that's
It's
our
part of
rec-
the-
that's our
That's your
recommendation.
recommendation as a committee?
A vote.
We're not, it's not, we don't have to amend it, okay, good,
No.
all right. Okay, so that would be the recommendation.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So going back to you, the chair, you're all set.
Yeah, the unanimous recommendation to grant petition 3418
Right.
with the condition as stated by Counselor Bedanza.
Thank you very much. Council, sir, that recommendation read. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, this is going to require a 2/3 majority vote. So 6 standing councils have to support it or is denied. This is going to be a roll call vote. Are there any questions on that? Thank you. I'm going to yield the floor now for the vote, beginning with Councilor Frida.
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski.
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Yay.
Councilor Feckley.
Yay.
Councilor Bonanza.
Yay.
Councilor Ottinger.
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier.
Yay.
I shall record as yea by a vote of 9-0. The petition is granted. We now move on to 35-18. Is the chairman ready to report?
Yes, petition 3518, Claire M. Frida, adopt a moratorium for the city of Leominster regarding recreational marijuana until December 1st, 2018. We did get a letter from Kopelman and Page, as well as from the planning board, which I feel I should read into the record. The letter from Kopelman and Page is dated March 5th, 2018. Dear Ms. Bouchard, the Legal Affairs Committee requested an opinion regarding Counselor Frida's petition referenced above, which is petition 3518. We have assisted many of our municipal clients with adopting a zoning bylaw or ordinance moratorium on recreational marijuana uses. While the city is not required to submit its ordinances to the Attorney General for review and approval like towns are, I note that the Attorney General has been approving moratoria that run through December 2018. So I would not anticipate that this ordinance would be subject to a legal challenge if adopted. A moratorium does need to have a termination date to be valid, however. As of now, the Cannabis Control Commission is still on track to begin accepting applications from proposed recreational marijuana establishments as of April 1st and to begin issuing licenses within 90 days after that. A part of the application process involves the commission contacting the municipality named as the proposed location and asking for confirmation as to what local ordinances would apply to the business, either allowing it, prohibiting it, or imposing conditions such as a special permit. It is our understanding that if the commission is informed that there is a zoning moratorium in place, i.e. fully adopted under General Law, Chapter 40A in the city charter, the commission will consider that the use is prohibited, albeit temporarily, and that would preclude the approval of a license. In addition, I note that since Leominster voted yes on question 4 on the 2016 state ballot, in order to adopt an ordinance that would either, 1, prohibit the operation of one or more types of marijuana establishments within the city or town, 2, limit the number of marijuana retailers to fewer than 20% of the number of licenses issued within the city or town for the retail sale of alcoholic beverages not to be drunk on the premises where sold under Section 15 of Chapter 138, or 3, limit the number of any type of marijuana establishment to fewer than the number of medical marijuana treatment centers registered to engage in the same type of activity in the city or town. Such zoning ordinance would have to be adopted by a 2/3 vote of the council and be approved by the voters on a ballot question. If there are any further questions, please let me know. We also got a letter dated March 12th, 2018, from the Planning Board Director, and she indicates, "Dear Miss Bouchard, at a regularly scheduled Planning Board meeting on March 5th, 2018, the Planning Board voted unanimously to recommend that a moratorium not go forward at this time. The Planning Board is not inclined to act as petitioner for a moratorium. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact my office. Sincerely, Kristen Kelly." So I think before I make a recommendation, I'd ask the petitioner, you know, if the letter from Attorney Riley changes your position as far as submitting the petition.
I
Did you
yield the
read
floor
the
to
police?
Councilor Frida.
Did you read the police chief's letter into the record as well?
I thought I read that last time, but I can read it, you can read it if you like, or I can read it again. This is a letter received on February 20th by Interim Chief of Police Michael Goldman. "Dear City Clerk Bouchard, in reference to Communication 3518, recreational marijuana moratorium, I, on behalf of the Leominster Police Department, support this petition. Careful and deliberate discussion must be had on how best to protect children and the larger community from any harmful impact of this misguided legalization law. As we have seen over decades, simply putting an age limit on a vice such as liquor and cigarettes does very little to insulate underage persons from obtaining these items. In particular, cigarette manufacturers specifically advertised to entice younger persons to use their dangerous products. The City of Leominster must get this right the first time so that we are not scrambling several years from now to fix an unforeseen or ill-planned-for circumstance. Sincerely, Michael Goldman, Interim Chief."
Councilor Frida, you have the floor.
I think KP Law strengthens my position. It's suggesting exactly what I suggested, that we take our time. Doesn't change the fact that we can work on zoning, we can work on the issue, but we're protected. And I think one of the things that was brought up along the way was that we didn't have time to do the moratorium, which he's basically saying that it's a prohibited use temporarily the minute it's accepted by the council, if it were to be accepted. I know there's a lot of opposition on the council for this. I still feel strongly that we do need to get this right. This is dispensing marijuana products. It's not medical. It's there are a number of different issues. The state doesn't even have all their stuff together yet. I think there's a lot of questions we need to look at and a lot of issues we need to deal with. So I feel strongly that we should have a moratorium in place and work on the ordinance and get it done before December. I mean, we can dissolve the moratorium anytime we want when we feel that the ordinance is in place. So that's not, doesn't have to go to December 1st. So.
All set. I yield the floor to the third member, Councilor Bonanza.
I'm opposed to 3518.
Thank you, Mr. Bonanza. Mr. Chairman, do you have a report?
Yeah, I understand where the clerk of legal affairs is coming from. I did support the first moratorium that was put forward. I think that we're a lot further along in the process, and I would be against the moratorium at this point, respectfully.
Thank you,
So
Mr.
the
Chairman.
majority recommendation would be to deny the moratorium.
You want to deny, you want to give leave to withdraw without prejudice? It's up to you.
Uh,
Just food for thought.
We don't
I
have the
think
ZBA recommendation yet either.
I don't think there's a distinction, it's not a distinction with a difference, because, you know, you wouldn't be prohibited from bringing the petition again if somebody wanted to. I don't think it makes any difference, really.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, restate your recommendation, please.
All right, well, we'll give leave to withdraw without prejudice, would be the recommendation.
Council, sir, the recommendation read by Legal Affairs on 35-18 to give said petition leave to withdraw without prejudice. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? Council Frida.
Yeah, I was just, we didn't get the zoning board recommendation yet either. I mean, I would've hoped we'd at least have that courtesy to see what their recommendation is.
I'll yield the floor back to the chairman.
I'm aware we didn't get the zoning board recommendation. I just, the areas that board handles aren't really at the level of a moratorium. I think we've got, you know, just for example, tonight, I thought we had what I believe was a fairly high-quality applicant. And I just think that the concerns that I had before about where the state was in their regulations, the state is much further along than they were at that time. And we're really down now to isolated issues that they're grappling with. But I respectfully disagree. I don't think the Kopelman and Page letter helps us, and I think that it essentially, anyone looking to do business in Leominster are gonna be told that there's a moratorium, or they're gonna be required to tell the state that there's a moratorium, regardless of whether we're working on the zoning or not. And I think that you have, I think you're gonna discourage people from coming here. I wonder if, I know it's, you know, there's a medical versus recreational distinction, but I wonder if the applicant that came forward tonight might have hesitated. I don't know that, but I wonder, but I understand what Councilor Fried is doing. I respect what she's doing, but I'm gonna respectfully disagree tonight.
Thank you. Council's heard a recommendation read again for leave to withdraw without prejudice on 35-18. Again, I will open it up to the council floor. Councilor Ottinger.
I tend to agree with Councilor Frieda and the police chief, because there are still, I think, too many questions open from the state right now, and I'm not even sure that our zoning would stand up under legal challenge, because other cities and towns are much less restricted than what we are with our current zoning. There's issues with, you know, this mixed use facilities and stuff like that haven't been addressed, and how would they be located? Could we have a convenience store that all of a sudden wanted to sell marijuana products, apply, over here on Pleasant Street or something like that? It would be a mixed-use facility, and according to the law, it would be available, and there doesn't seem to be any restrictions in our zoning to prohibit that would be standing up in a court of law. So I tend to agree with Councilor Frieda and the police chief that we should give this a moratorium to make sure we get it right the first time.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilor Ottinger. Any other comments on the floor? Councilor Feckley.
I will not support withdrawing this petition because I cannot get over the positive recommendation from the police chief. It's as simple as that. The police chief of the city of Leominster has indicated that for the safety of the children and the larger community that we need more time. He agrees with that. I don't think that there's really much detriment to us giving ourselves more time. As Councilor Fried indicated, we can continue on with our work during the moratorium. And I just think that we really need, we asked him for his recommendation. He sent us a positive recommendation on the moratorium, and I think that we need to take heed of it.
Thank you, Councilor Feckley. Councilor Bonanza.
Based on the fact that 3518 is a petition to petition for a moratorium, let's be clear, it's my hope and my belief that the ordinance that would regulate recreational marijuana in our city will be in place with good work and diligence will be in place before the moratorium would be. Based on the fact that we have scheduled a hearing on the planning board's marijuana regulation for April 9th.
Thank you, Council Bonanza.
Planning
Any
board,
other councils?
I'm sorry, but the planning board, I believe, is scheduled to have their hearing on that same ordinance on April 5th.
Thank you. Any other
We're
comments?
talking about this ordinance right now, though.
Excuse me?
I said, we're talking about this ordinance,
Right,
not the
okay,
other.
okay. Council Comey hasn't weighed in yet?
Yeah,
You have the floor.
you know, just for a point of clarity, I'm still questioning why this is on the agenda. We've already denied a moratorium. So if we voted as a council to entertain this petition, we'd be violating our own zoning because it's within 2 years. We got a negative recommendation from the planning board, if I'm not mistaken. We already took a vote, and we have this on the agenda again. So I'm not even sure why we're talking about this, but certainly I'm against it. I think we need to get zoning in place sooner than later. What we've put in place for zoning for medical, I'm sure is gonna, recreational pretty much mirror it. And I think if you got any more restrictive with our marijuana zoning, you'd be basically banning it from the city without banning it. I mean, I think we have a more than a good balance that we're keeping it out of neighborhoods, but at the same time, people that want access to it for whatever reasons they feel they should have access to it. So I'm certainly against putting a moratorium in place.
Thank you, Council Comey. Any other councils that haven't weighed in yet? You're all set? I yield the floor back to the chairman.
Yeah, just 2 quick points. The proposed ordinance that Council Bedanza referred to, I think it's just important to note that that's already been reviewed one time by the city solicitor. I think that's important to note.
Thank you.
The other thing is, a lot of the concerns that have been raised in this discussion are addressed by the state regulations, you know, and I think that's important to note as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments? Council Frida.
We still have the issue of federal versus local. We still have the issue of not being able to use a bank or a debit card or have any kind of transaction other than cash when it comes to recreational. There are a number of issues that haven't been addressed yet that has the state on one side and the federal government on the other side. I brought it up before in zoning, not in zoning as much as loans. There are federal loans that are even being questioned. There are federal employees and state employees that have issues if they're caught with it, their jobs. I mean, there's just a number of things that need to be addressed by the state that haven't been addressed, and by the federal government cooperatively or non-cooperatively. But there needs to be some discussion. So I just think there's a lot more on the table. I understand we want to get this in, and we want to attract marijuana into the city of Leominster. I get it. And I'm not opposed to it. I just think we need to do it right, and I think we could have some problems.
All set? Would any other council like to have a last comment? Councilor Shalfo Zephyr hasn't spoken yet. You have the floor.
Yep, thank you very much. Recreational marijuana was voted for by the city of Leominster. You know, the residents said, yes, we want it. I know some people have mixed feelings about that. But we do have to deal with it, we have to work with it, we have to plan for it. And this 4018, which is on our calendar for the next meeting for us to discuss, and we have the public hearing, this from the planning board director is very detailed. It's a really good, solid beginning. And I would rather start now, rather than be reactive. I'd rather be proactive, straightened out, get it done well, understand what the issues are, get those things in place, and then we can always respond to whatever the state does that we have to change. We can make those changes. But I think let's get our own framework in place. Let's figure out how we want to deal with this. Let's get it done.
Thank you, Councilor Shalfo Zephyr. Any last comments? Councilor Ottinger, you had your hand up.
I just, you know, I would tend to think that by putting the moratorium in place, we are being reactive. We're making sure that we get it right before we go ahead and make a mistake, you know. One of the, strange questions that I look at is this issue that came up down in Worcester with this private social club that allows people, basically they open up in a restaurant area and a bar area, and people can go in there and smoke their own marijuana. Could we have something like that in Leominster? We don't have anything in our zoning regulations that prohibit a social club, do we? Not that I'm aware of.
That regulation is being dealt with the state separately in the future.
Well, shouldn't we wait till we find out what the state says?
No, because we
No.
have a whole bunch of other material to deal with before that.
No. It's just my opinion.
I respect your opinion. Last comments, anything that hasn't been said, if you'd like to share it. If not, Councilor Frida,
I'll
I'll yield
just
the
share a
floor to
last
you.
one in regard
Yours.
to Councilor Zephyr's comment about the city of Leominster. It was a 51-49 vote. And there were a lot of people, if you talk to them now, whoever I talked to when I was running for state senate, there's a lot of people who voted for it in Massachusetts, and although I don't know how anybody would not know that they were voting for it in Leominster, I now had a difference of opinion when it was coming to Leominster, when it was talking about being in their backyard or being possibility of showing up in their neighborhood. Although it's zoning for industrial, I get that, but there's still a lot of people. If you took a vote now, I bet you'd have a different vote.
But it sounds like we'd have to have another referendum on the state level for that to happen.
No.
Right.
That's what
No,
I'm
you
gonna.
can ban it.
that's-
Council, go ahead.
I was just going to say that there probably are people who didn't know what they were voting for and would like to have a redo, but we had talked about this at our last meeting, then propose a ban. If people are really that opposed to it, which I understand, then propose a ban. Maybe that's what the petition should be, but I would rather just be proactive and manage it up front.
Okay, I'm gonna close the floor right now, and we're gonna take a vote. This is gonna be a roll call vote. The recommendation on 35-18 is leave to withdraw without prejudice, beginning with Councilor Frida.
Nay.
Councilor Dombrowski.
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Yay.
Councilor Feckley.
Nay.
Councilor Bonanza.
Yay.
Councilor Odenger.
Nay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier.
Yay.
I shall be recorded as yea by a vote of 6-3. Leave to withdraw without prejudice is the action. Thank you. We now move on to 36-18. Is the chairman ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. Petition 3618, Mark C. Bedanza, delete the 1-hour parking restriction on Central Street, westerly side, beginning at a point 120 feet south of Union Street, southerly for a distance of 205 feet. We received a positive recommendation from the traffic agent from the police department. My recommendation would be to grant 3618. We also took this up in subcommittee, and I believe the unanimous recommendation was to grant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard the recommendation read to grant 36-18. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? Councilor David Cormier.
Yeah, thank you. I believe that this was, this began, I think, when a resident over there got a parking ticket, and there was, I don't know if there was an issue with signage or whatnot, but I just want to commend the Ward 4 councilor for putting this on the agenda. I think I'd be willing to bet that if we were to look through our ordinance book, we will find a lot of ordinances where there is an ordinance but no signs, or there might be signs but no ordinance for no parking. So I think this is something that probably should be looked at and cleaned up. It's obviously causing some confusion because it was brought to the attention of the Ward 4 councilor. So I think, in addition to stop signs, maybe this would be a good project for some ward councilors to look through the book and see what's in their ward and do some site visits and make sure signs are there, and then if they're not, check with the police department and see if they should be, the sign should be put up or if the petition should be deleted. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Cormier. Any other comments on the floor? Councilor Bonanza.
Councilor Cormier is right. Project it would be. just my little review of this particular area was pretty significant number of regulations. There's signage there. What's happening is it's never been enforced. The reason for the signage has long since passed. There was a doctor's office in one of these homes that's probably been closed for decades. And the gentleman was parking there routinely, and all of a sudden he started getting ticketed. And that's what prompted it. There's really, as the traffic officer suggests, there's really no reason for it anymore.
Thank you, Council Bonanza. Any other comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation to grant 3618, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, it is granted. 37-18, is the chairman ready to report?
I am. Mark C. Bedanza, Richard M. Marchand, David R. Cormier, Gail Feckley, Sue Shalafo Zephyr, and Pauline Cormier. Delete Chapter 14, Section 21 of the Leominster Revised Ordinances and replace with a new section relative to the consumption of marijuana or tetrahydrocannabinol. There you go. I think I can come up with a different vernacular for that. But we did receive favorable recommendations from, I got my recommendations mixed up here. We did receive favorable recommendations from the Board of Health and also from the Police Department. This matter was taken up in subcommittee, and the unanimous recommendation was to grant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard the recommendation read to grant 37-18. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 8-1, Counselor? By a vote of 8-1, 37-18 is granted. We now move on to 38-18. Is the chairman ready to report?
I am. Petition 3818, Mark C. Bedanza, Richard M. Marchand, David R. Cormier, Gail Feckley, Susan Shalafo Zephyr, and Pauline Cormier. Accept local option pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 64N, Section 3A, to impose a local sales tax on marijuana or marijuana products sold by a marijuana retailer in the city to anyone other than another marijuana establishment at the rate of 3% of total sales. We did get a recommendation back, I'm sorry, from the treasurer, indicating approval of this. We took this up in subcommittee. I thought it was unanimous. My recommendation is to grant. I'd ask you to poll.
I'll poll the committee. Counselor Frida, second member.
Nay.
Counselor Bonanza, third member.
I'm in favor.
Mr. Chairman, you ready to report?
Yes, the majority of the Legal Affairs Subcommittee would vote to grant, would recommend granting 3818.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard the recommendation read to grant 38-18. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? Counselor Bonanza.
Yeah, this of course is a home rule petition with an enabling state statute which allows us to tax retail sales of marijuana. That's both medical and recreational. And we are taxing it at the maximum rate permitted by law, so that 3% is as much as we can tax it. As we know, we already have a retail license out there, so this would cover sales from that establishment. And it's just an attempt for the city of Leominster to take full economic advantage. We all have varying degrees of trouble with marijuana. Generally, this has been a long and torturous project, you know, enacting the will of the voters, if you will. So the idea is just to take full advantage of the economic benefits of marijuana.
Thank you, Councilor Bonanza. Councilor David Cormier?
Yeah, I just have a quick question, I guess, through the chair to the Ward 4 Council, who I think wrote the petition. We all signed on to it. We're going to tax everyone except another marijuana establishment. By law, we can't do that through the
No.
chair right?
No, you can't.
Okay.
It's similar to the wholesale, you know, sale of goods. A wholesale sale of goods is a tax exempt transaction. So for example, the special permit we granted to the cultivation site, if they were selling it to another dispensary besides their own, we would not be able to tax that.
Okay. So I just wanted to, point that out, that we're not giving them a break, we can't, so. just in case anybody asked.
Thank
just for
you.
clarification.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions on the floor on 38-18? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation to grant, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 8-1, it is granted. We now move on to the financial report. Mr. Chairman, are you ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. We began the fiscal year on July 1, 2017, with a balance in the stabilization account of $14,517,855. Through this evening, all appropriations either passed or pending would total $4,486,690, leaving a balance in the stabilization account of $10,031,165.
Thank you very much. We now move on to Communication 39. Is the chairman ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. C-39, relative to the appropriation of $2,000 to cemetery perpetual care overtime account, same to be transferred from the cemetery perpetual care income account. This transfer is necessitated as a result of the expense to cover overtime for weekend burials. It's a rather modest amount of money, and that's necessary. It would be my position to grant C-39. I ask the President to poll my committee.
I'll go to the second member, Counsel Pauline Cormier.
I'm in agreement.
Third member, Counsel David Cormier.
I also agree.
Thank you, thank you, councilors. Mr. Chairman, are you ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President, the unanimous recommendation of Finance would be to grant C-39.
Council has heard the recommendation to grant Communication 39. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the communication is granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, in order that the sum of $2,000 be appropriated to the cemetery perpetual care overtime account, same to be transferred from the cemetery perpetual care income account. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council has heard that recommendation read. Are there any comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yea.
Yea. Yea.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the order has been adopted. Mr. Chairman, Communication 40.
Communication 40, relative to the appropriation of $6,050 to the Health Department expense account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund. We have a letter to the mayor from the health director, Mr. Knuth, dated January 31, 2018. Dear Mayor Mazzarella, approximately 17 years ago, the health department obtained a grant to purchase a copier for our office. During its service life, this copier has had many mechanical issues. Therefore, we continued to purchase annual maintenance contracts. Because of its age, Xerox will no longer service the unit, and we now have to purchase toner and from third-party sources. Last year, we were told that the larger internal parts are getting close to the end of their service life. The unit jams frequently, and at times the ink is not fixed into the paper. Therefore, this is why we are now requesting funds to replace it. In April of 2017, Greg Chapdelaine obtained a quote from NECS for a copier that has performance standards that are similar to the existing unit. Yesterday, I received an updated quote from NECS for the newest model of the same capabilities. The copier is still $5,150, and based on our current usage, the annual maintenance fees would be approximately $900 annually, plus color copying. We respectfully request the following funds: Canon Color Image Runner C3530, copier $5,150, 1 year maintenance $900, total amount requested $6,050. Thank you for your consideration of this request. If anyone would like to discuss this request for funding, please refer to them to contact my office, and attached to the letter was the quote from NECS at $5,150 as indicated in the letter. It would be my position to grant C-40, Mr. President. I'd ask you to poll my committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield the floor to the second member, the clerk, Councilor Pauline Cormier.
I'm in agreement.
Third member, Councilor David Cormier.
I also agree.
Mr. Chairman, do you have a report?
Yes, Mr. President. The unanimous recommendation of Finance is to grant C-40.
Thank you for the report. Council's heard that recommendation read to grant Communication 40. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? All those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the communication is granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President. In order that the sum of $6,050 be appropriated to the Health Department expense account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council's heard that recommendation read. Are there any comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yea.
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 Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the order's been adopted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank all of you tonight. Good job. Great job. We're gonna take a look at old business. Does anyone have any old business you'd like to bring to our attention? Councilor Shalfo-Zephyr, you have the floor.
Thank you. Through the chair to the finance chairman. Any
Yes.
news on free cash?
I have no further update, just what he's told me in the past, that because of the audit, they haven't closed the books, and as a result, they cannot
On the city
certify.
side?
On the school side.
Okay,
The school audit.
Okay, the school department has told me that their books are closed, so I don't know
They-
where
they
the
are closed.
discrepancy.
But they are closed, but they're being audited. So the audit has to be complete before they can
Certify free cash? And that's DOR, okay.
Yeah,
Thank-
that's what the comptroller's told me.
Okay, thank you.
You go with that, Counselor? You all
Mhm,
set?
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any other items under old business? I just want to rewind the meeting a little bit. I'm going to yield the floor back to Counselor Frida. Not your fault. You took over 39-18. We had to schedule a hearing. So if you can make a recommendation on 39-18, the hearing will be scheduled for April 9th at 6:30 PM. If you can make that recommendation, please.
I'm sorry, April.
Yeah, April 9th, 6:30 PM, petition 39-18.
Okay, the recommendation is regular course with the previously mentioned departments, and we need to vote on a hearing date, April 9th, 6:30.
Thank you, Counselor. So 39-18, again, is given regular course with a hearing scheduled for April 9th at 6:30 PM in the council chambers. All those in favor of the recommendation for that hearing, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, hearing is established. Thank you very much. A couple items under old business. Any other items under old business? Okay, good. New business. All right, go ahead, Counselor. It's yours.
Just to remind everyone, you should have gotten a letter from the Councilors Association.
Yeah.
The President's Dinner, it's to recognize all presidents and vice presidents. You didn't get it? Should have gotten it. Should have been probably here.
Any mailboxes, maybe? We can, if we can get another
I'll
one
give you,
out.
I can give you my copy.
Counsel, what's the date on that again? It's coming up, right?
Tuesday, the 20th. It's at Holy Cross, 5:30. It's,
How much is it?
It's a dinner. It's part of the membership.
We in the past have sent counselors also.
I'm sorry?
Can we all go or just?
Yes, all
Okay.
councils,
So
but
it's
it's an
open to
honor.
everyone?
I've been before.
Yeah,
It-
it's a nice night. It's a great night.
And the keynote speaker this year is Andrea Campbell. She's the first African-American president of the Boston City Council. She's going to be the guest speaker, and John Robertson, our MMA legislative director.
Can we let you
We'll
know
give
right
the
now if we're
update.
going? Can we let you know right now if we're going to it? If we
Yeah.
can go? Okay, I'm going. Anyone else?
I'll phone him in if
Florida? Florida, yeah.
I plan to.
I hope it's cold. And it snows. No, okay, thank you. Anyone else, just, if you're not sure? Okay, thank you for bringing that up. A couple other items, just for there was an article that I saw about 60-plus cars got tagged last snowstorm. I don't think the police really want to do that, but they have to for a public safety issue. There's a snowstorm tonight. You know, tell your neighbors, tell your friends, get the cars off the road so they can plow. It's gonna be a big one, a nor'easter. That's one thing. Also, there is no school tomorrow, most of you know that, and the kids are now getting out, according to the superintendent, on June 22nd. I'm sure she'll be presenting that to the staff in an early, later date. Council Bonanza?
On the snow ban.
Yeah.
On the parking ban. I think one thing I learned through constituent service in this past storm is that if, a lot of people, especially if you're under 40, probably don't have a landline. And they're not getting the reverse calls if you have a cell phone unless you register it. So I know at least some of my constituents received tickets because they were not notified on the reverse call. I mean, the ordinance is on the books, so
Right.
everybody's
Laws,
subject
law.
to it.
Yeah.
But there's a little bit of misunderstanding surrounding it. And the other issue is, I had a constituent or a number of constituents that received tickets after the storm. If you remember what the condition was, the next day, the pavement wasn't even wet. And there were cars that you couldn't have plowed if you wanted to, and there were people who got tickets. on dry roads, parked on dry roads. So, you know, I plan to have a chat with the police chief. I just would hope that they would have a little bit of common sense with
Right,
the
exactly.
application of these tickets.
We had a problem with maybe last year, when we had a night that it was in the 50s, we got ticketed. So they changed that policy to, you know, now within, what, is it 24 hours or 48 hours before a storm? And then afterwards for the cleanup, so just, it's good to get the car off the road to begin with if you can. It's tough, it's tough. Anything else, Councilor Feckley?
I just wanted to mention that Ways and Means Committee meeting relative to reviewing Assistant City Clerk applications on March 22nd at 5 o'clock.
Okay, is that a closed meeting in executive session?
We will open it to all.
Right.
There will be a review of procedure.
Right.
Then open to any discussion. And
Right.
then the subcommittee will be going into executive session to review the applications.
Okay. The applications, are they finalized for that
They will
meeting?
be finalized on March 16th.
Okay, this is for the City of Leominster City Clerk only?
Assistant City Clerk only.
Assistant City Clerk only, just to make everyone clear on that, okay? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Couple of bright things and then something else to share with you. Gardner's gonna have a Tri-City Council meeting, they're gonna host it. It's a great night. They're looking for late April, early May. Now, with the exception of the second and fourth Mondays, we pretty much open to be able to, is anyone gonna be gone to, at that point? Sometime it may be late April, early May. Should be pretty good. Councilor Odenger, how about you?
I think so.
Okay, good. All right. If there's a date, the assistant clerk will notify them tomorrow. And then just, you know, if anyone has a conflict that you definitely couldn't make a certain night, if you can just let the assistant clerk know, and we'll take it from there. The Leominster High School cheerleaders are gonna be taking off to Florida as they perform in a national tournament, and we wish them the best. They did a lot of fundraising. They had to reach a threshold of $14,000 in addition to all of the contributions that were made by family and friends. They did a lot of things to get to that point. Right now, they are still accepting donations. We have a couple of Red Sox tickets that were donated by Councilor Dombrowski, thank you. And the young ladies, student athletes, are raffling them off at $5 apiece, or 5 tickets for $20. You can contact the athletic department at the high school. Checks can also be made out to LHS Chair and dropped off to Leominster High School, and it'll go into the account for the young ladies who'll be, again, traveling to Florida. So that's gonna be coming up. We had on a bad note, we had a horrible accident that took place on Merriam Avenue this past Saturday morning. And it was, I believe, approximately 8:25 in the morning. We're fortunate in that there was an ambulance from the fire department returning to the station from the hospital. So they were right on the scene. There was literally no delay. But unfortunately, it led to a fatality. And there was one individual that was killed in the crash, and others that were very badly hurt. It's a bad intersection. We all know that, you know, and regardless of if there was a red light that someone ran or a yellow light or whatever, or speeding was involved, a death should not occur. You know, it just should not occur. And so, you know, we reach out to the family of the individual who has passed, but at the same time, we reach out to the community. And I'm not kidding you, coming home today from Worcester, a person read a yellow/red at the corner of Willard and Central, and this guy had to be going at least 50. I got down to the intersection at Litchfield Street, 2 cars ran a yellow where they could have stopped. You know, this is a tragedy, you know, and it's unfortunate. We don't have the coverage right now, and I spoke to one of the reporters at the paper, where the next thing you know, they're on it. We're not looking for the details, but what happens is when something like that gets published in the newspaper, that intersection becomes very quiet, very fast for a period of time. You know, and you've all been through it, and we've seen it, you know, and they were on that site from the moment of the accident until probably sometime in the late evening dealing with it. It was a good 15 hours. You know, they had to shut power off to deal with it. It was a mess. And to the public safety people in town, to Joe Pori especially, people at National Grid, the state police are involved. They did a tremendous job. You know, the neighborhood is very sensitized by it. It's a tragedy. It doesn't matter where the individual was from or the people involved in the crash. They saw it, they lived it for 15 hours, you know, so it was horrible. So, you know, just reaching out, as important it is to just slow down a little bit and try to comply and abide by the rules of the road. They're there for a reason. Someone shouldn't have to die because someone runs a red light, if that happens to be the case. So I'll tell your kids, slow down, everybody just slow down. I think we'll be better off for it. And the last thing, this is Amanda's last meeting with us. The last time Ways and Means was engaged in hunting for an assistant clerk, they did a very thorough job, and they really scrutinized the process to bring Amanda to the table here. You've been so professional. You know, we're gonna really miss you. And hopefully someday we'll be able to steal you back. You never know. But in the meantime, we wish you the best of luck on behalf of all the members of the council here. Thank you. Now, anything else under community calendar, Councilor Shalfo? Anything you want? Go ahead.
This isn't really under community
okay, go
calendar.
ahead.
This is new business,
Yep,
actually.
yep.
And Council Bedanzer and I, we were talking about this earlier this evening at the Library Board of Trustees. So what I would like to ask the mayor is, many of you here might have heard about ALICE training.
Yes.
That some departments in the city, or some people from some departments in the city, have actually gone to at the high school, and what this is emergency training. And it's training for people in an emergency situation, how to evacuate the space that they're working in. So my question for the mayor, I guess, and the police chief, is how is this training, or is there a calendar for rolling this training out to all city departments? And I'm particularly interested in City Hall, and for us, you know, as a council, to be part of that training as well. So if,
Great idea.
yeah, if the city clerk or acting city clerk
Yep.
could reach out to the mayor and ask him that, that would be great.
Great idea.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, Councilor Frida.
Yeah, on another bright note, I don't know if anybody has driven by Carter Park at night, but those lights that are up are really nice. They're throughout the city now. They really make a difference. You know, just congratulations to, I think it's Joe Poirier and Bob Kashevsky, and I think Roger Brooks. They've been working on that for a long time. And I think they're all LED, so they're money saving beside. It just really looks nice there.
It's beautiful. It is. Anything else? If not, a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And seconded? Thank you.
The Leominster City Council meeting is brought to you by the generous support of the Service Oil Company, 345R Lancaster Street, Leominster, 978-466-1922.